let's go. Any short question before we're doing it?
Yes, you forgot to hit the go live button on YouTube.
Just did that. Purposely I did it right now. Okay, so hello, Armin.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much for joining us in this crazy hour for you.
That's okay.
So
it's always
I'm
an
sure
honor.
I wouldn't survive. Usually I'm falling asleep at about 10 p.m. and that's it. It's very hard for me to pass the time. Actually,
Well,
it's 9.
It's 2 a.m. here, but this is okay. This is fine. I feel
the
well.
Philippines, right?
Yes.
Not everyone knows the story how you got there. If you want, you can tell us the story.
No, it's boring.
I'm happy to have Armin here. It was I think it was in March 2019 that Armin came here.
Yes.
And it was a start of a very good relation, I think, with artists over the world. And this is great. But it seems to me like, March 2019 was a different world. It's not like it is today, with all the corona going around. But maybe we'll get to it soon enough and we can do this visit again. We'll be happy to have you here again.
I would love to. And I have to say that the videos from my first visit is finally finalized and edited. So I just need to go and hit publish. So those are coming out very soon. Check out the channel is called Ideas Unbox. So those will come out soon. So yeah, that's another thing. And I'm really looking forward to coming back to Israel. It was I'm not exaggerating. It was the best trip I ever had. Like if I could, I would go to Israel every year if it was possible for me. But
we'll be happy to have you here. That's for sure.
And
it was a great time.
It was only a good trip because you guys made it so. Like I felt so good and welcome over there. It was But the interesting thing is that what I was hoping to get out of that trip, mostly other than learning experience for me. By the way, for all the learning experience that I had based on the things that you guys showed me, and I keep using it to today. Like every time, it's such a major bragging right in any debate. When I say, well, when I was in Israel, it's just like everybody shut up, listen to me, because I was there. I was there, and you guys weren't. And this is what people told me, like just be quiet, okay? I know what I'm talking about, right? So
it reminds me of someone that just yesterday started teaching me history of Israel because he thought I don't know that.
Sorry. But what I was hoping to if I kept on going to Israel was to come up with like a project or an idea to have atheists from Israel and atheists in Palestine for them to have very difficult conversations with each other, and to use that as a way to show that it's possible to have very difficult conversations about sensitive topic that people are fundamentally on opposite sides from each other, right? And to use it as a way to say to the rest to people that are talking about other topics, other very sensitive topics, that if people from Palestine and if atheists from Palestine and atheists from Israel are able to have these kind of discussions with each other, then there's really no excuse for the rest of us in the atheist community. Like it doesn't get as more sensitive and more than this topic, right? But
totally to use the atheist platform as a place where different people can talk to each other without caring exactly what your past belief are, or your religion, or even your nationality. Because we have something in common that we don't have a book to follow any rules. And so it's good for people all over the world, and it certainly could be true for people from the same place, like we are in the Palestinians.
Right. But since then, everything has gotten worse on all the other topics. It seems like we can't even have civil conversations about the most simple of obvious true statements. Then, it seems like people just lose their mind. And if you just just stating things that are obvious fact that they shouldn't even be controversial at all. Like, we're not even close for us to be able to have civil discussions about the about sensitive issues. Like, I just recently posted like a few obvious statements that you can't even deny. Like, nobody in their right mind could even deny that it's true, but people just lost their mind over it because the way that the assumptions they made about what I was actually saying, instead of, like, recently I posted something saying that, do not resist arrest, do not charge at people who are holding guns, right? And I also made it clear that what I was saying was not meant to blame the victim. It was meant to keep the victims alive. And the number of people that actually thought that that was like racist against black people, or that this is obviously not true, you get shot either way, no matter what, whether you resist arrest or not in the United States, it was insane. It was insane. Like, this is so obvious. And the way people's like reasoning work, people like it seems like they don't understand how probability works. They don't realize how numbers work. They don't understand what anecdotal evidence means and why anecdotal evidence doesn't really hold much water compared to, like, actually looking at large number of sample sizes. The fact that a lot of people assumed a whole bunch of positions that I was taking that I wasn't, based on this simple fact. It's just like, we're so far behind. And this is all from the atheist community, right? And I can't imagine how it's going to be look like in the religious community, right? And I was like, we're so far behind at what would be ideal in the conversations that we can have. Like, people kept on saying, like, Armin, look, this person didn't resist arrest and they still got shot. I'm like, yeah, I didn't say it would eliminate your chances of getting shot. Obviously, that's anecdotal evidence. Like, do people in our community don't realize what anecdotal evidence is and why that is not technically evidence for anything? It's just so disappointing. But then I have to remind myself that no matter how bad things are, we have come a long way. Like, things are better. It just doesn't seem like it. But if you keep looking at what's happening in your timeline, because this is why I keep having to rely on people like Steven Pinker to give me hope about how much progress we have made so far and how much things better are. Because the more you consume news, the more you feel like, the gates of hell have opened on our society. But yeah. But what do you guys think about, like, do you have any suggestions on how we could actually encourage proper discussions without people actually losing their mind and becoming so, like, hating each other because they disagree with each other?
Practice debate.
That for too many times people are paying too much attention for who is talking and not what is talking. And this is a kind of divert the discussion to places where, hey, you're not allowed to say this or that just because you belong to this group and not the other group. And people don't put too much emphasis on the content or the reasoning behind it. And if there is something that I really want the artist community to promote in those kind of discussions, is to put this emphasis on the reasoning, or on the facts. What do you think about that?
Well, I think everybody thinks that they're on the side of, like, using logic and facts, even if they're not. Like, everybody just thinks that. But the way that I think most people are coming up with their conclusions is by checking what team they belong to, right? And what are the positions of the team that they belong to. And it's mostly it's about like, I need to signal to the people, my tribe, that I really do belong to this tribe, right? So you figure out what are the talking points of your tribe, and you make sure that you say those things. And you also, but that's not usually good enough. The best way to signal to your tribe that you are part of the tribe is to go heavily against the people that are supposed to be against your tribe, right? So you have to identify the in-group, you identify the out-group, and the best way to be a hero in your tribe is to be the most aggressive against the out-group, right? And you identify, because it's just lazy. People do not, it takes a lot of investment to actually listen to people. Apparently it's too much to ask and actually try to figure out what is the reasoning behind what they're saying. It's easier to just remember that these are just the lines that if somebody uses anything that is similar to these lines or these narratives, they are part of the out group, and you just mark them as the enemy. And as soon as they say those things, they're like, okay, so you are the enemy and I'm supposed to go after you. So I could go to my tribe and tell them, like, look how good I am. I am really, really against this guy, right? And at some point, it's not even about waiting for those people to come to you and identify them as enemy. At some point, you become addicted to actually looking for those out group. Like, you actually want to find these people to, like, if you don't find enemies, then you're gonna feel irrelevant, right? You need a bad guy. Okay, you can't. This is why a lot of these, and the atheist community is not immune from that. That's why a lot of times when you make a lot of progress, and your enemy becomes weaker and weaker and becomes less relevant, you have to redefine who the enemy is, captures a bigger group of people, because you always have to be, your tribe has to always be under attack, and there needs to be a threat. You cannot survive, you cannot show your relevancy in your tribe unless your threat is a big threat. And you don't want to be winning, right? You don't want to be winning. You have to always be at a constant stage, it's constant war, right? So that's why they constantly redefine what racism is, or what misogyny is, or what I don't know, even like religious people. For example, Muslims want to make it bigger deal about how big of a deal the Zionists are apparently taking over the world, the Illuminati, the Christians think like Satanists are everywhere. And atheists do this as well. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say atheists do this as well.
No, okay. Sorry.
Just one point where I want to say atheists sometimes, I've noticed, exaggerate how, in some cases, how religion is influencing in their lives, right? And sometimes they compete with other countries. For example, if we mention, like, oh my God, look at atheists in this country, like, it's punishable by death for you to leave your religion, and people are like, oh, they're jealous of that. They're like, well, we want to be the main victims. They're like, well, Trump would do the same thing if they could. Like, I don't know if they would. The Republicans, no, I don't know if they would. But you just have to be the victim. You have to be you just don't have to. It's not just being about the victim. You have to be the greatest victim, right? It's like, yeah. But go on, Amir. You wanted to say something?
I wanted to point to two things that from what you said that are interesting. The one thing that we as Israelis find out that in the debate of the race issue in the States, for some reasons, anti-Semitism got involved. It wasn't supposed to be part of it. I don't understand why someone put it inside the discussion, and suddenly you find out the BLM coming with anti-Jews. I'm explicitly not saying anti-Semitic because it's a matter of interpretation, but some kind of issues that are coming into the discussions, and it wasn't supposed to be there at all. we're not part of whatever is going on in the States. And this might interfere in what you're saying, looking for a bad guy.
Right.
Why
And yes,
put us inside? What is your view about that?
Yeah, I think that so what's happening, for example, in the US is that for a while, racism accusations and misogyny accusations and homophobia accusations were being used so loosely that these accusations just lost their stinging power that they used to have. And unfortunately so, because misogyny is a real thing, and it's a big problem. Homophobia is a big problem. Racism is a big problem. These are not things that have gone away magically, but because people kept on using them so loosely and without making baseless accusations left and right, for a while they became useless as to for us to actually identify real sources of problem. So that's why these people that are offense junkies and they're looking for ways to be victim, they moved on to two new sources of accusations that still had the stinging power, and still like their career ending, platform removing accusations that still worked, were accusations of transphobia and anti-Semitic accusations, right? And this was very alarming because especially with the transphobia accusation, is because this is a new movement that needs a lot of help. The gay rights accusation, the gay rights movement has made a lot of progress in the West. Obviously, it's not done, and it will probably never be done. But it had made a lot of progress. So this whole regressive leftist movement that came and used accusations of homophobia, it didn't do that much damage to gay rights. People it's the rights that and people's perception of gay rights has already made a lot of progress. But the trans right movement needs a lot of help, and it's just starting. So for that to all of a sudden being taken over by the woke cult, by the regressive left, and be used for their own for the accusations to be used as a weapon for their own warfare, really hurts the trans rights movement, right? And this is a movement that also hasn't picked up yet, and for it to be associated with the woke cult people, it's really bad PR for trans rights movement, and it's already has done a lot of damage when it comes to the Gen Z generation, right? And their perception on what the trans rights movement is about. And when it comes to the anti-Semitic accusation, again, this is going to really be difficult. This might help a whole bunch of anti-Semites around the world, right? Because again, they're going to get, what this does is provide a cover for the people that are actually anti-Semitic. The example that I often use is the Red Scare in United States, when everybody in United States at that time was being accused left and right of being a communist. And that was actually much more intense than what we're seeing right now with the woke cult, because the government was involved. People were being arrested. People's careers were being ended. The FBI was investigating anybody. You could be under investigation because there's a picture of you shaking the hand of somebody that was in the labor movement, that wasn't at this meeting, that wasn't even a communist. This was just like a general union, but you're like, oh my god, you're a communist, and you could get in trouble. But and that's very similar to right now, people being accused of racism left and right, because what that did for actual communists and spies, for the real spies of Soviet Russia, is that it was so easy for them in that environment to get around, because there was just so much resources and so much, everybody was being accused of communists, and that provided a cover for the actual spies of the Soviet Union. And the interesting, another similarity between the Red Scare and what we're seeing right now, is that we know, looking with hindsight, looking back, that the communists, there were communist spies in the United States, but it was never that big of a threat. And that idea, the scare that people had that the Soviet Union might actually like end the United States and they're going to come take over, and communism might actually spread and take over everything in the United States, that was way exaggerated. And the Soviet Union at that time was not at all in a position to, you know, to do anything, when it to end the United States, which is very interesting, because right now we have a whole bunch of people that are convinced that we are basically close to United States being taken over by tyranny, by far right white supremacist fascists, and they think like this is like such a, I mean, nothing is impossible, but these people are convinced that this is very likely. And for a lot of people, that they think that we're already there, that the cops in the United States are just KKK with a different costume. The government in the United States is a white supremacist one, and Trump is as a big of a tyrant as Khamenei is in Iran, and that there's no difference. There are like a lot of people that actually genuinely believe this, non-ironically.
I was thinking, are we
Armin,
community? Yes.
if we can have some, I think, questions maybe of discussion.
Igor, let me finish first. Armin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was trying to ask the question, are we as an atheist community, should we lead some kind of a different way to discuss, like promoting rationality, promoting all this biased kind of discussion, and to lead something else? Can we take a lead in something like that? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think like talking about how to have rational discussions is the second step. We are way behind that. Right now we have to have this. We have to first start talking about how to even have discussions without losing our minds and hating each other, right? Way before we get to start talking about, okay, how do we know what's a good rational point and what's an irrational point? We have to first encourage people to just like, hey, can we actually just listen to each other? It's like, you know what, you're irrational, it's fine, just be irrational and be wrong for now, but can you at least like participate in discussions without completely dismissing people or hating on people just because they disagree with you? I think that is a more important exercise right now. And I think the atheist community is actually very good for encouraging this, because a lot of people, I don't know for what reason, assume that, oh, atheists can get along on almost anything, whereas we are so different from each other, right? Atheists they only agree on one thing, and is there an evidence for the existence of God? No, that's it. Other than that, we don't agree much on anything else, right? So but the interesting thing about the atheist community is that what the atheist activism part of our community is meant to go out to the world. And okay, so a lot of people think that what the atheist community is trying to do is to promote atheism. That is the second, I think when it comes to priority, that comes second to our number one priority. Our number one priority is to just make atheists be able to live among other people, like to fight against oppression against atheists, discrimination against atheists. That's our main priority. Second priority might be to promote atheism, but because we all know that we're not gonna live in an atheist world, tomorrow or the next day after. This is not going to happen for a very long time. So what we're trying to do instead is to convince religious people, not our main message to religious people is not that, hey, have you considered atheism? No, our main message to religious people is like, hey, have you considered not killing us? That's our number, or oppressing us or ostracizing us or imprisoning us or accepting us in your family or dating us or being your neighbor, like just accepting us. Like that's our main priority, just our main message, right? So to accomplish that, what we're telling religious people mainly is not like, hey, maybe there is no God. Our main message to religious people is like, hey, maybe we can disagree and still get along. That is our main message, right? And to do that, we have to convince religious people that people we can be passionately against each other's positions. Like you could be like, we're not saying like don't attack atheism. Go attack atheism, and we'll attack Islam or Christianity, and we'll go aggressive as much as you want against our ideas, and we'll go aggressively against your ideas. But we could do that while still like not hating on each other, right? So it's interesting because we are trying to tell religious people to not let's be passionate, let's passionately disagree with each other without hating each other. But how can we actually sell that message to religious people if we atheists cannot even do that to each other, right? So we, atheists themselves seem not to be able to accept each other in each other's communities if we have political disagreements, right? If we have civil rights disagreements, we don't seem to be like, we seem to suggest that these disagreements mean that certain people are not welcome in our community, right? And if we cannot accept people, other atheists who disagree with us on other topics with each other, how are we going to go then ask religious people to accept us in their communities when they disagree with each other? Like we need to practice what we preach before we go to other people with this message.
So maybe this is you raised up a really, really good point, I think. Maybe we should promote like this meetup that we are discussing with, talking with you and later with Zara, that you're atheists from different places in the world with different idea, but we're very close to each other because all of us are atheists. Maybe we should do more stuff like that, like having some free talks with atheists all over, not necessarily YouTubers or famous ones. Just let's have something like public meetings. That can be a good start to start learning how to talk, to discuss. I'm not saying the word debate, but yeah, we can even make debates like rules of debates. Maybe that's could be a good start, something interesting to learn how to make good conversation among us and spread it out.
Yeah.
Not only for religious people. I think I don't find sometimes a major difference between religious leaders and political leaders, and even people who do advertising. I think all of them are suffering from the same problem of diverting evidence into populism, if we call it like that.
Yeah,
Just
maybe.
to make, but this is in a later stage. Maybe we should take a lead of openly discussion with among atheists. So I don't want that every time that I'm responding to something in either the Atheist Republic page or some other atheist page, and I'm writing that I'm in Israeli, in a minute, everybody forget that I'm atheist, and all the discussion become about politics, and I don't want to hear of you. I'll give you an interesting example. A few weeks ago, I don't remember in what atheist page, somebody asked, if you weren't your country, who is the most resemble you? And I was very clear. I just wrote, I want to be Spanish, because they're having the same temper as we have. So, and suddenly people were starting to attack me. The Spanish don't want to be conqueror. The Spanish don't want to kill Palestinians and stuff like that. So that's something I don't want it to be. I want to if somebody asks a question about culture, let's talk culture. And that's something that we need to develop, as you said.
Maybe you could call those events "How to Disagree" or something like that, or civil disagreements between atheists. Something to celebrate disagreements instead of seeing it as a sign of hostility. You know, celebrating our disagreements, something like that. I don't know. Too many people see disagreements as a, call to war, to go against each other. Like, life is boring without disagreements. You only learn from people who you disagree with. This is not something that we should see as like a sign of hostility. We should see that as a challenge, as an opportunity to learn or to teach.
We call this meetup breaking the borders. And the idea was, when I gave it that name, I'm talking about the Hebrew translation of the name. In English, we changed it a bit. And the idea was that's what we want. We want to break borders between atheists, different atheists from all over the world.
Yes.
And maybe we should continue with that.
Yeah, I would love that.
I think let's have a few moments of open questions to give everyone to ask questions. What I'm suggesting for all the people that are hearing us, let's have the question written in the chat, and then we'll go over it. I think that will be the best way to do that. So write your question in the chat and we'll go over it. So go ahead.
Should I just find one and read the question? I see.
There's one question from when we just started. A shy one that wants to know, what was the biggest impression on you in Israel?
Okay, so in Israel, and actually I'll answer both Israel and also in Ramallah. So the interesting thing, I was surprised on how much. Okay, there's many. I don't know which one to tell as the biggest. I'll tell you a few. I'll just say you two in Israel and one in Ramallah. In Israel, I was surprised on how much people disagree on almost everything, and how a lot of the positions that I thought that many people in Israel would agree with seems like there's no. I couldn't find two Israelis that agree with any of the topics. Like anytime, which is good. Like this is a great thing. To me, it seems like Israel is a society that has a high tolerance for disagreements, right? Even on the most fundamental topics, it seems like every two Israeli had major disagreements with each other on it, right? And as soon as you brought it up, a debate would start between them, right? And to me, it seemed like this is part of the norm. That was my impression. And it didn't seem like it led to anybody, it was just a norm, right? It wasn't something that would make these people stop being friends with each other, right? I was very shocked to see that what made me sad about Israel is the fact that compared to countries like Canada and United States, secularism is not as respected. I mean, if you compare it to obviously Israel's neighbors, secularism is, has made you have a lot more secularism in Israel compared to almost any other country in that region, obviously. But compared to countries like Canada and United States, secularism in Israel is very far behind. the amount of religious influence in the military, in the school system, and the fact that like we have the fact that you have different religious based court systems for family rules, Jewish ones, Islamic ones, that is funded by the taxpayer. The amount of religious rhetoric in the politicians' platforms, it just that is a bit sad. So that was very disappointing. Again, I guess I was spoiled because I was, for being not just an Iranian but also being a Canadian. I was spoiled with the level of secularism that we have in Canada, so that's what I was comparing it to. What was also interesting is how much that was different in Ramallah. It seemed like there was not much disagreement in there among atheists, right? So in the atheists in Israel, when it comes to politics, they were all over the place. They had so much disagreements, right? But in Ramallah, when it comes to politics, the whole Israel evil narrative was unanimously agreed upon, and there was no one. Everybody was on script on that. Like everybody was like, yeah, okay, fuck Israel. No, this like I was like, hey guys, you guys don't have any disagreements over here? Like, nope, we're all on the same page here, right? Like, there doesn't seem to be much room for dissent among among Palestinian atheists. So that was very disappointing to see that wasn't even a conversation. But the difference was very, and again, these are based on personal experiences and an anecdotal evidence, and my experience might not represent at all what is the reality. It might, so whenever I come to conclusions based on anecdotal evidence and personal experiences, I recognize that this is just a first impression, and I'm willing to completely dismiss it as soon as I see any form of data or more reliable methods of collecting information, right? But my first impression was that disagreements and dissent is way more tolerated in Israel, way more than in than in Palestine. And it's very interesting for me to see what atheists in Palestine, what was their, like, given that they have no religion to use as a way against in the narratives against Israel, were they at least more accepting of Israelis than their religious Palestinians, or less? So that was something interesting for me to experiment.
To the question, is the conflict in ethnical, nationality, or religious conflict? It's a question that I don't think there's an answer.
I think it's all of them, and the more it's just every single one of them makes it more complicated. So, for example, everybody thinks like some people, there's extreme claims on both sides. Some people think like, oh, the conflict is all the religion, and then a lot of people say, oh no, the conflict has nothing to do with religion, and they're both wrong. The religion is not necessary for these conflicts, but it just makes the conflict more complicated and harder to solve. That's usually the influence of religion. There will always be problems even without religion. Religion just makes the problems more difficult to solve. It doesn't. If you remove the religion element out of it, it's not going to be just rainbow and butterflies and people holding hands and singing kumbaya. And we shouldn't, like, a lot of atheists think that, and we shouldn't claim that. The world is not just going to become into everybody tolerant and peaceful and no wars if you remove religion out of it. That's not how it works. But it will make the problem less. It's just, religion poisons everything. It makes it all the problems in the world more difficult to solve. And it makes it easier for you to take advantage of people's ignorance. So it's a major problem, but it's not the only problem.
There are some questions in the chat, so let's go over them.
About the disagreement, there's a somewhat humoristic saying in Hebrew: 2 Jews, 3 opinions.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And that's a good thing. That's a feature that should be celebrated as a feature, not a bug.
Okay. There was let's go to the chat. I don't want to miss some questions over there.
Okay. Which one we're going next?
I'm time.
Hi, Zara. You're muted, but I see you.
There's a long question. I can
Rita.
read it. I'm not sure it'll make sense in the end. So, question for Armin. I've often noticed that a lot of prominent atheists have often focused more on there not being a respectful disagreement rather than focusing on which side has more merit to its arguments. Don't you think this is an unhealthy practice? Not being respectful or being respectful doesn't affect the content of one's arguments at all. Why not focus on the content?
Because how could you expect people to even listen to the merits of your points if they don't even listen, right? If people just bring their guards up as soon as you start talking, as soon as they associate you with the out group, like if you want people to actually start paying attention to the reasoning behind your arguments, you have to encourage them to be less hostile and just take their guards down. This is what I do when I talk to religious people, right? Human beings are emotional animals. We have to work with that, right? If I'm talking, for example, to a Muslim and they want to have a discussion with me about why Islam is true and why I'm wrong, if I just like tell them, listen, this is the logic, this is why you're wrong, this is why you have no evidence for your claims, blah blah blah, this is a logical fallacy and you're making no sense. I mean, I have a point and I'm right and they're wrong, but that's not the most efficient way of going about doing it, because they're just going to see this as an attack and they're not there to learn from you. They're there to win. They're there to win against you, to make themselves feel better and to crush you, and to come out feel victorious. It's about winning a battle rather than seeing who's right and who's wrong. So the first thing you need to do is to make it seem like this is not a fucking battle, right? That we can, before we actually meet arguing what the merits of my position is, right? So what I try to do is to get their guards down, as this just makes strategic sense, is to just see if I could point out some of the things that we agree on, right? And to focus on those for a little bit, right? And by talking about the things that we agree on, they, what I've noticed is that it brings their guard down and it turns it into a more casual, friendly discussion rather than a fight. So, I wish that I don't know who asked this question, but I wish it was like you mentioned it, you wanted it, like every conversation people just focus on the merits, but that's not how it works, and we have to deal with how people actually operate. You might wish that, I wish people would just consider each other's logical, the logic behind their arguments, and that was enough. But given that that's not how people operate, we have to deal with the real world and how emotional people are.
We have a question of someone that they ask why prominent atheists are not respectful in their arguments.
What? I don't know who you're talking about, though.
If you go to, I can't read his name, I'm sorry.
Why are some atheists are not respectful? I don't know. We have to ask them. Yeah, I don't know. Depends on who we're talking about. Yeah.
Why not focus on the content? Yes, we should.
Yeah, I responded to that question.
So it would be better to talk about disagreements from common ground.
Yeah, I wish that was unnecessary, but again, common ground should not be necessary for us to talk. It's just it's just strategic. It shouldn't be necessary, but it is. You know, if you disagree with me, if we, you know, it always works. This is like, no, it doesn't always work, but it works better than other methods that I've tried to talk about the things that you agree with. And again, yeah, and actually that's an important correction that I made. It often doesn't work. None of these often work, but it works more often than other methods, right? So if I say like other methods work 1% of the time and this works 2% of the time, it's still a lot better, right? So a lot of people say like, "Oh, Armin, no, you know, good luck changing people's opinions and stuff. This is, you know, people are, especially religious people, they're not going to change their opinions and stuff like that." Yeah, you know, obviously we're not talking about most of the time. We only need like a 2 or 3% success rate, and that's how activism works. Activism, you know, it's compounding interest, right? You work with a small percentage, and you try to tweak your methods for you to just go from 2% maybe to 3%. And you know, if you look at the small amount of effect that you might have, it will make a big difference in a long time, right? In you know, all form other forms of activism, you know, when it comes to gay rights, women rights, trans rights, minority rights, it wasn't like they were dealing with different human beings. They were dealing with the same species that we're dealing with, but they made small progress in the short term and by changing people's opinions, which led to a lot of progress in the long term, right? Just because you can see, just because it seems hopeless to you, because you had conversations with how many people, right? How many people, like, what's your sample size? Like, people's like, oh yeah, I talked to religious people and nothing doesn't work for me. Well, I mean, your sample size is very small. We talk to hundreds of thousands of religious people, and you know, the success rate is a low percentage, but it ends up being thousands of people changing their opinion, and then they might also go talk to other people. And again, this is compounding interest. Like, even if you talk to 100,000 people, 1,000 of them will change their opinion, and that 1,000 new people that you managed to work on, they themselves might go and have effect on other people, right? So a small percentage is all you need.
I mean,
if I may,
you may continue this point, ask you to continue this point. You earlier mentioned that actually the atheist community has a very good chance, as I understood, for discussion between the Palestinians and the Israelis. If we can give an example of a positive conversation that will bring a message to all other type of categories. Based on, as you described your experience here in the previous visit here, on what base do you think the atheist community have the advantage or the ability to have to start this conversation, even when you say that there is no symmetrical disagreements on both sides?
Right.
What
So
makes the atheists capable of having a better conversation rather than other groups, that we actually can provide this example, this additional value to the culture of discussion?
well, my idea was, if we had more time and resources when I was in Israel, was to have like a event where we have atheists Israelis and atheist Palestinians in the same room and record that conversation with each other, right? And before getting into politics, I would use the same strategies that we mentioned here. Would be for them to start talking about religion, right? To start, you know, and see if we could get them to bond with each other over their atheism before we start talking about politics, right? I think just being, you know, just, and the, you know, the process of humanizing the other side will work. You could even do an experiment. You could see like what would like the conversation look like if you just start with politics without any softening at the beginning, and or you could have another conversation to see like, well, let's, before you start having a conversation of politics, let's spend like half an hour or 1 hour just the both sides making friends, talking about religion, talking about fun stuff that they might agree on, and fun stuff that is not politics that they might disagree on. Who has the best hummus, right? Which is Jewish food versus Arab food? Which one is more delicious? Like some friendly disagreements, just to like, uh, you know, break some ice and make friends, and then go into the political discussion and see maybe that would be a lot more less hostile kind of a discussion if you started that way, right? And I'm hoping that, given that both sides are atheists, there are going to be it's going to be able that's going to lead into that's going to help both sides find more ways for them to see common things that they have in common, right? Like when I was in Israel, I was on a podcast with some Israeli atheists, and they were telling me that me as an Iranian atheist, they have more in common with me than religious Israelis, right? They say like, they were saying like, we don't, this whole ethnicity they didn't see that as a big part of their identity. They said like the fact that I'm an atheist and they're an atheist makes me and them closer than they see themselves with like other ethnic Jewish people who are not an atheist, right? And I got the same message from atheists in Palestine, right? They said like, well, they see themselves as closer to me as an atheist than maybe other Palestinian. I'm like, okay, well then you two should also be able to see each other close to each other, like the atheist Israeli and the atheist Palestinian. You should find that as a way to maybe like you guys are maybe closer to each other than religious Israelis or religious Palestinians, right? That should be used as an excuse for you to have a conversation and to use that conversation as a model, as an for how other people should have this conversation. Like you could maybe like, hopefully if that conversation goes well, we could like brag about the religious people on both sides, like, look how we're having these discussions compared to you idiots. Like, look how this is what this conversation should be looking like. If it goes well. If it doesn't go well, delete all the files, hide it, don't show it to anybody. No, I'm just kidding.
If we could do that, it's not that simple, because we live in a society where we talk freely. Sadly, the Palestinians are not in the same position.
Right.
So it's
also,
difficult. But yes, go ahead.
May I also say something?
Yes.
Yeah, basically, from what feeling, because I have like friends from Iran as well who are atheists, and friends from Palestine. Like the feeling that I personally feel is that we have this shared struggle, this shared pain. I mean, obviously, I don't feel the same way that a girl in Iran feels or a girl in Palestine feels, but we all sort of have this shared pain and this sort of damage that the religion does to us. And for me, at least, this is the first thing that unites me with fellow atheists. And also, I believe that as atheists, and no matter from like which political party we are, or like state versus gender, etc., obviously the values of free thinking that we all aim to have. So I think that these values are like the basis to a better society, a local society, or like internationally. I mean, we can talk about it for hours, but first and foremost, it's a shared struggle. And I mean, okay, yeah, basically that. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
yeah, that shared struggle could be used as an excuse to for for getting people's guards down, right? So, for example, if Israeli atheists com- complain to Palestinian atheists about the way religion is forced on them in Israel, I mean, a whole bunch of Palestinians would like the fact that you're complaining about Israel, right? So that's just what might get you some brownie points to begin with. But the fact that that's about religion and how you are also tired, like tired about of how religion is influencing your society, might make them feel like that whole shared struggle that you're mentioning, the Palestinians might relate to that. They might be like, well, we experience more of that, but they can see like you guys are dealing with it
Yeah,
as well, right? So that
exactly.
yeah. uh yeah, but the thing that you guys also mentioned, Amir mentioned, regarding the fact that they cannot speak freely, I was wondering if it would be possible to like have that conversation but blur their faces, and change their audio, so what the conversation, if we record that conversation, what it could look like is that the Israelis are facing the camera, but the Palestinians, the camera is like recording them from their back. And also, a video like that would demonstrate how different what different standards the Palestinians and Israeli are dealing with as well, right? But I don't know where we would even have this conversation, given that a lot of Israelis are not. It's not safe for them to go to the parts of Palestine that I went to, and Palestinians are not even allowed to go to. So I don't know where you would have that conversation. Maybe you could have a Zoom discussion where the Palestinians don't show their face.
We can do that in Zoom, and no, Palestinians can come to Israel. We can't go over there. They can come over here, but they need to get a pass.
It's hard though.
Something like difficult? A visa.
It's difficult though.
It's difficult, but it's possible.
Okay.
We're on the other hand, it's much more difficult.
I think when I went to Israel and the West Bank, usually if you're Israeli getting into Palestine, it's harder. They'll check you, and the other way around as well. But within the borders, you're like, if you don't look like a foreigner and if you look like an Israeli, you'll be attacked by people inside. But for Palestinians to come out to Israel, yes, they'll be searched, their cars will be searched and everything, but you're not going to necessarily be attacked in the country by the people.
When I went to Ramallah, okay, so here's another thing that I was surprised when I went to both Israel and Palestine. Here's a similarity between both of them. In Israel, as soon as it seemed like I was confused and I didn't know where I was, somebody would come and try to help you. Somebody, like, that was so surprised at how fast that happened. And that also happened in Palestine, right? Both of them, this was more common than almost anywhere else that I've been to. You look confused and you look lost, both in Israel and Palestine. Within seconds, somebody like, "Are you lost? Can I help you? Where do you need to go?" So that was a pleasant experience in both countries. And yeah, in Palestine, somebody went out of their way. The guy like basically got us a taxi, and he came with us to take us to the place that we wanted to go. Like, he went all the way. He was telling us where to go, what to do, and he also offered us, once we're done with our project, to go to him for some food. Was very nice, very nice. Oh, and the food, and oh my god, the food. Yeah, if I come back to Israel, it has to be only for a week, or else I'm gonna get fat.
Yeah, the food there is amazing. Yeah. I did find that Jerusalem particularly was quite I wouldn't say hostile, but it was quite strange because it's a melting pot of different people. There's so much tension, and Tel Aviv was very free and very moving and quite hip. Although when I went to, when I guess I'll just mention my story when I start talking. I don't want to disrupt Armin's questions.
No, it's okay.
Oh, Armin, by the way, I got banned on Facebook right now.
Oh, you're banned from Facebook? Jesus.
I just had mass Pakistani reporting my Allah's gay poster, and they banned me.
Jesus.
Yeah. You have a problem with the Pakistans. Yep. Okay. So maybe it's a good time that we pass. Alon, did you wanted to say something?
Yeah, if I may, I want to refer back to Armin's. You were talking about how to actually have a conversation or have a debate with people that don't agree, and you refer, at least you suggested, let's start with things that we agree, and then later on move to things that we do not agree. I would first of all, I would try to make the difference between a one-time conversation with people that you don't know and a multi-session over time that people are actually debating with each other, which is totally different. And in my perspective, in my at least my experience, the moment that you can achieve some kind of empathic relationship between the parties conversing, that's when you can go on and talk about the content, which content is, whether you agree or disagree. Now, to have an empathic relation with people, it's not easy, and most of the people do not go into a discussion that way. They are not seeking to be friends with each other, to actually know each other and to respect themselves. But when you are striving to that, and if you avoid even the conflicts, okay, just spend some time to know each other and get some kind of mutual respect, then the discussion can start. Unfortunately, it goes with, let's say, long period discussions that go over time. You can see it over, it can over months that this trust can be built. On single time occasion, it's much more difficult. I'm talking about atheist versus theist discussions, okay? This is my 2 cents.
I think it's very good. I completely agree with everything you said. Yeah, very well said.
Can we continue, Armin?
Yep. I mean, are there more questions? I'm looking forward to Zara's talk as well. So
yeah. Okay. So we'll continue with Zara. Armin, thank you very much for the time, for being awake at such a weird time, for talking with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We really thank you for that, and we really hope that we will be able to see you here. First of all, we need the COVID-19 to go out of us and return to normal life, and then we can start discussing again meetups and conferences and all what we have here. And I'm taking your ideas, trying to make some kind of discussion between us and Palestinians, or with the Arab Israelis, which is much more easier. And we'll try to do that. Maybe it's a good idea, but let's wait for this epidemic to go over, first of all.
I forgot. So, thank you. I forgot. No, before one last thing, I forgot. This is me not remembering. I know Susanna is gonna kill me if I don't do this. Guys, subscribe to Atheist Republic. Guys, come check out our YouTube channel, please. So I usually forget to do this. I should have done this earlier, but if you guys want to hear more discussions from me and the rest of the people on the Atheist Republic team about all sorts of things, our YouTube channel, subscribe there. Yeah,
I put in the link in the description.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you
very much. Yeah. Okay, just perfect. 1 minute, because I promised a friend to show his book. So 1 minute for a commercial, and then we go with
okay. I heard boobs, not books. So I apologize.
No. We are decent people. At least we're trying to. Okay, so I'm just putting the book I was talking about in the sharing so everyone can see it. So please, if you'd like the book, get in and buy it. This is the link, and I'm going to put the link for the book and its promotion in the chat book. So that was a few seconds of advertising, and now we'll go back to Zara, which is should be very interesting.
Well, I hope so.
We
it
know
looks
it.
Like, well, it looks like a lot of people know Armin, but I will start by introducing myself and what I do. And I loved Armin's talk, and I wanted to interrupt so much. I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I held it together. So my name is Zara. I am based in London. I am an ex-Muslim. I was born in Tanzania. I'm from a Shia family, but I am Australian now. So I left Tanzania 12 years ago, moved around, and then settled down in Australia. I got bored. I came to the UK, which is closer to Israel. I did mention that I have been to Israel. I went to Israel for work for 2 weeks. I worked at Google, which is fancy. It's nice, but it was such an eye-opening experience for me because before I went to Israel, I was really scared of Jews. I was really scared of Jews, and I was still by label a Muslim, but I wasn't covering my hair. I had not prayed. My first day was on the Tel Aviv beach, and then I went to the office the next day, and I was really scared. So I was in the hub where I was doing technical support, and a lot of people would come to me and talk to me in Hebrew, and they were like, "Oh, you're not our local IT person." And I'm like, "Well, I also don't speak Hebrew." So that was interesting, but I was so scared because I felt like if I told them I was a Muslim, I would be dead. I would be discriminated. We would get in some kind of conflict because until then I was very anti-Israeli and pro-Palestinian. And a lot of it, like, my family, when they found out I was going to Israel, they're like, "Oh my God, take care, make sure everything's fine." And honestly, it was one of the safest place I've been to, especially Tel Aviv. I was surprised that I wouldn't even say harassment, the only weird thing that happened to me in Israel was somebody on drugs talking shit, but it wasn't even a form of harassment like catcalling or anything. And this is at like 1 a.m. And I was just walking, and it was all really safe. And I went to Jerusalem, and I've always wanted to go to Al-Aqsa, but I wasn't wearing a hijab, and I was wearing I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, and they made me buy the whole thing. But I had an African passport, I had an Arabic name, but it was still an African passport. So they didn't really know where I was from. It was, to them, it's like they've never met a Tanzanian. They've never seen, well, I look Middle Eastern or I look South Asian, but they couldn't place me somewhere. So they kept asking me if I was a Muslim, and I'm like, yes. And on the door, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but they made me recite the Shahada. They made me recite some verses from the Quran. And that was so strange to me because, when I went to the Wailing Wall, nobody cared. When I went to the churches, nobody cared. And I go inside, and I was stopped like by 5 different people, women or men, like inside the Dome of the Rock. And they were like, "Are you sure you're Muslim? Can you recite this? Can you recite that?" Now, mind you, I haven't recited or prayed for a very long time. So I kind of remembered. It came back to me. Um, but I felt so holy being there. I was like, oh my God, the first mosque, um, I'm so excited to be here. A lot of things have happened here. But I sat outside the mosque. I was meant to feel calm, but I felt this feeling of being uncomfortable because I'm in a land where I was told was taken away illegally, and there was so much conflict, but I also wasn't a Muslim at the time. I couldn't I couldn't feel holy at the place even if I was meant to. And a lot of that, like a lot of after Israel, after going to the West Bank, my experiences talking to Israeli, I found that the difference between Israeli and Palestinians was Palestinians are quite friendly, like when you first meet them, but Israelis are quite friendly when they know you better. I think once they get to know you, they're quite shy and they seem to be arrogant, but the friends that I made, like I'm still friends with them and they were happy with disagreements. They weren't vile, although one person was quite annoyed that I called Palestine the land. They were like, it's not Palestine, it's all Israel. But to me, I'd always known it as Israel and Palestine. So overall, when I left Israel, my experience was one, very shocking. I was an anti-Israel. I wanted to move there. I was like, oh, if I get a job at the Google office there, I really want to go there because it was so chilled out. It was safe. The weather was great. And, in terms of like the people and everything, it was fine. It was a livable city. It was metropolitan and everything. I got to know a lot about the Jewish culture. I got to know a lot about, I guess, I never knew that people, I guess I never knew that there was a birthright that a lot of young people are given to go visit Israel. And I guess they are highly indoctrinated at that point, and some people choose to move. I had a few friends who moved from the US and from Australia, and I could never understand. I'm like, you have an Australian passport. Why would you move to Israel? I didn't get that until I met them and I realized the sense of community in them was so ingrained. And they were some people who would die hard defend Israel in everything, as though they couldn't criticize it at all. But that was my experience. Obviously, did not meet a lot of atheists as a group. There were a lot of people who were like, yeah, we're Jewish, but we don't really believe in God. Like it was being Jews by identity. And that was really surprising to me because in my head, when you're a Muslim, you're a Muslim. There's no such thing as you're Muslim and you don't believe in God. Until I read Ali Rizvi's book and The Atheist Muslim, and I was like, and then when he described his experience with a Jew and how his heart was pumping, I was like, oh my God, I remember this because that happened to me. But that was my experience over there. And I have since then relentlessly tried to keep a balanced view on whether it's a two-state or a one-state, but also kind of being that defending the irrational hate against Israelis or against Jews. And sometimes I'd like to keep my opinion open about the what people would call the illegal settlements, only because I don't know enough about it. But I also haven't researched, and that was not my area of expertise. But what is my area of expertise is women issues coming from Muslim countries, which I'm going to talk about today. So I know that there have been a lot of cases, even in Israel, on honor-based abuse. And usually I never really do research, but I work from what has come from the cases that come from my organization. So I run Faithless Hijabi, and it was first introduced on Secular Jihadists with Armin. That was the first time anybody had heard of it. So basically, the first time I came out public was with Armin. So it's been a journey. Like I was at a stage where I wasn't comfortable coming out public, talking about it. I had not much theology, like not much insights into like theology or culture. I just knew that I wasn't a Muslim, but I wanted to help other women talk about it, because a lot of women came to me in private, but they were just so scared to voice their opinions in public. And like I said, I am banned from Facebook for no good reason. And a lot of times there's so much criticism, and almost always with women, it comes at a sexual price. So it's always people saying that they would like to rape me, my mom, my sisters, or when the attacks come to somebody like Armin, it will be to their mom, his apparent sister that doesn't exist. I don't know if you have a sister. I know you have a brother. Oh, okay. Yeah, or like, his wife. And it just kind of showed the nature of how misogynistic people viewed it. And last night and today I did some research on like 5 research papers on honor-based abuse, because I didn't want to talk about the numbers because it is a high proportion of it. But I wanted to talk about more on the psychological aspect of it. And this is by no means my work, but it is something that aligns quite closely with the stories that I receive. And I'll go into detail of what we do with victims of honor-based abuse and how we give them a voice, and what we want to continue doing with the organization. So it's kind of like a promotion for the organization in all good spirits, obviously, because the idea is to bring in more people with their expertise and helping us promote a lot of it. Like Armin said, promoting more discussions, more nuance, and a platform to talk about these issues. So I'll get right into it. I'm just going to screen share. Are you able to enable screen share, Amir? Let me know when you're ready to.
I think you are. You can share it now.
Yeah, I can. Perfect. So I tried putting in more color because I know it's a very heavy topic, and I tried making a lot of the art or changing colors, so it hopefully makes it a little lighter and more educational. So the idea was to explore honor-based abuse, and yes, there will be a lot of text on the screen, so I will go slow. So understanding what honor-based abuse is, a lot of the times we equate this to honor killings. And honor killing is, yes, a part of honor-based abuse, but there's so many other forms of honor-based abuse. And they're basically practices that are used to control people in either religion, culture, or communities. And a lot of times it is women, but it's not exclusively to women. I know many men, especially ex-Muslims, who have come, or even Muslims who have come and have expressed how restricted their life is. Obviously, not to the same amount of how it is for women. A lot of the times, because honor is so heavily enforced on sexual honor, like it's so heavily enforced on the sexual side of it, that it falls almost always on women, and they carry the burden of honor. But to explore it even more, I wanted to kind of help distinguish what domestic abuse was and what honor-based abuse was. So honor-based abuse is, yes, part of domestic abuse, but it is only the description or the justification of what that domestic abuse was, and specifically identifying that this was done in the name of honor, which can be very different from somebody violently just hitting their partner or their family member for different reasons. But honor-based abuse needs to be distinguished for the very purpose of us identifying what can we do to reduce it, identify it, because a lot of times it's not physical, it's a lot of emotional, psychological manipulation. And we'll go into a little more details on what other ranges there are. I actually read a 300-page thesis for this, so I'm not going to go into that much detail, but if you have any questions after this, I'm hoping we can engage in a more discussion type platform. The one thing that is common with honor-based abuse as type of domestic abuse is that it happens over a long period of time. Maybe honor killing is the last straw, but it does happen from a long period of time where women are or the victim is placed in a lot of duress, control, manipulated, shamed, bullied, and then finally even just physically abused. So I thought it would be interesting to understand what honor means and how the abuse comes about, and why it is mostly dependent on women. So honor is basically, it's a principle that governs behaviors of individuals or communities and it's prevalent in a lot of different societies. It's the idea that, I guess, reputation is important for an individual, family, or community, and especially the behavior of how a person acts within those boundaries. And it is usually female members, because it's such a sexualized idea with honor. It's usually female members that are burdened with it, like I mentioned. And there are 3 different words that are used for this. And Armin can correct me on the last one because I don't speak Farsi, but ird is how honor of a man or family or community is vested in a woman, and that it's best understood as a woman's sexual purity, virginity, and this does not account for when she is married or when she loses her virginity after marriage and within the marriage, but it's mostly outside of it. If you do get divorced, then that's fine. As long as you do it the right way, it's fine. And in Pakistan and India, it is called izzat, and that refers to a lot of, I guess that is, the honor that is placed on the women collective of the family, community, or even a country. And namus in, I guess, Iran, Turkey, describes how men's honor or the family's honor is, again, dependent on female. They're mostly the same thing, but they're just different words and in different countries.
Namus.
Namus, okay, thank you.
Namus.
I was trying to understand that while we had large numbers in Islam at this day and age, it isn't only, it is prevalent in Islam, but it isn't only limited to it, mostly because there are other religions that have practiced it. There are other communities that have practiced it, but the common theme behind all of it was the patriarchal culture within those abuse structures. So this paper identified there were a few papers I read, so some of them identified over 100 cases and understanding what was a reason behind that person being hurt, abused, or I guess, killed in their final form, and why that happened. And a lot of it was justified by female purity, virginity, chastity, the clothes that they wear, I guess if they're talking to anyone, or how they use social media. And there are a few stories that we'll go through as we move along with this. Almost always in honor-based abuse, there are people that you're close to, who know you, who monitor you, and there are always your immediate family, and very occasionally your extended family or the community at large. Usually mothers and sisters, aunties, women have been also involved in conspiring of honor crimes, but also been a subject of it or a secondary victim of it. And I will explain that, because the idea of this session was more to explore how women play a part as a perpetrator and also as a victim at the same time, and how different punishments come about for being each a victim and a perpetrator. Some of the forms of honor-based abuse is, physical abuse, psychological abuse, female genital mutilation, forced and/or arranged marriage, honor killing as it lasts. But something that we don't always consider to be honor-based abuse is the controlling behavior of women or girls, women or girls in the house. A lot of times, and while I never really had that personally, the violation of privacy, private spaces, and you're basically placed on house arrest without publicly, or without establishing that this is your boundaries. And a lot of times these are for reasons such as wearing Western clothes, not putting on makeup, your bags will be checked, your bus passes, passports, mobile phones, monitoring your social media account. And when I go into the work that we do, I'll give you an example of what had happened to me or other girls, and what is currently happening to my sister. Even though I come from a relatively liberal home, because my family and I still have a really good relationship. So women's role in honor-based abuse can be quite tricky to identify. Women can be the driving force, especially mothers, in honor-based crime. And in the cases, quite commonly when women are pregnant, when their daughters are pregnant, and it is always the women who are inducing abortion than it is the men. These are obviously identified from that study and the cases that we looked at. And sometimes there are perpetrators or secondary victims acting under duress. Secondary victims is basically and a situation where somebody or a male or the father can tell the mother that if you don't fix your daughter or put her in line, you will be next, or like, you know, I will abuse you, or it's your fault because you didn't raise them right. And with that, the parents sometimes the mothers sometimes start condoning, you know, ill treatment of women. They also, I think women usually use a softer approach than a harder approach. Instead of like killing, it's usually the men who will do the physical violence, but women also act in ways to emotionally abuse the person by bullying them, encouraging others to bully them, and we'll go into honor diaries in a bit, but also making the victim feel less, monitoring them quite closely, except when it comes to when the girls are pregnant. A lot of the times, I'll give you a story on this as well. A lot of the times it is the mother who will try hurting the daughter the daughter into getting an abortion or inducing an abortion by hitting them, and not the father. The father, I guess, would rather kill them both, or they'll blame the mother to do it. And there are times where mothers, because they have a softer approach, are the ones saving the girls from situations. So that would be, you know, giving them their passports back, encouraging them to run, hiding their secrets, because I feel like my mom has done that for me. And, you know, a lot of times that comes at their cost. So because honor is, like we said, dependent of the family's reputation in the community, if they are willing to help that woman, even if it's their daughter, with something that is considered to be immoral, their reputation is also diminished, and they go through the same kind of abuse, if not from their family, but by the community. Oh, well, we do have a lot of stats, which I did intentionally not bring up in this talk. While we do have a lot of stats on people that have reported their abuse, people that have been killed, people that have run away, we don't necessarily have all the numbers in the UK specifically of people that are British citizens, have been taken away from here and have gone to either Pakistan, Somalia for either FGM, or have gone for forced marriages because they either never come back, nobody follows up on it, or that there isn't a process that we currently have to bring people back. I actually have a friend who's a social worker and she's working on it, but from what I've heard, they're not as stringent on it or not heavily focused on it because they're trying to be sensitive around the culture. Maybe the person had to go back because, you know, they had to see their family for a long time, or they've decided to move to their Somali family, but not ever considering that their lives could be in danger, or that they're getting married at a younger age because other countries have different legal ages as the age of marriage. But a lot of it doesn't even come out to the world as I guess as honor abuse, because many of them don't recognize it, that, you know, things like not making a single decision about your life in the name of, but you're going to go astray or you're going to do something that you'll lose your virginity, is known to be as an honor abuse crime. I wanted to read out a few stories. I have it on my laptop. Perfect. So I have a few cases here that I think will be really interesting and very, well, they're horrible as well, but they're very different from what we would have heard in the news. So in one case, a 14-year-old child was tied to a chair and systematically assaulted. She had her hair cut off by both her mother and grandmother because she went missing from home and was found in a park. The intention was to basically make her unattractive so that she doesn't get, I guess, she doesn't get a boyfriend. They made her drop out of school. And it looks like that this was in a Western society because they were scared of her becoming more Westernized. And yeah, and basically she was then on house arrest after that. Another instance was, another instance was the violence by a mother. A 12-year-old Bangladeshi child divulged to officers that her mother punched her 5 times and pulled her hair because she wouldn't pick up something off the bedroom floor because the victim was tired. And basically she was just hit for being tired and for not listening and not being obedient to the mother. One of the times that sisters and mothers have assaulted the women, and then finally her brother hit her, was a 14-year-old victim had a 40-year-old victim attested that the mother had locked herself in a bedroom in order to monitor her daughter's Facebook page. A fight came up whereby the mother jumped on top of the child, started to bang the victim's head against a metal frame. And in an attempt to stop the child, the child bit the mother's hand. And then the sister was involved. The sister contributed to pulling the victim's hand. And then later in the day, when she went to get food, the mother and the sister bullied her into not eating. And they didn't see anything wrong with that. It was basically a punishment for her to disobey the mother and monitor and to basically give away her privacy. So this is on the pregnancy that I spoke about before. A mother was encouraged by a female cousin and consequently slapped her pregnant daughter twice in the hip rather than the stomach because the victim had taken evasive action by moving out of the way. The victim believed that the mother was trying to hit her in the stomach to cause harm to her unborn baby. In this case, the mother appears to act almost unnaturally abhorrent towards the daughter, inflicting violence that constitutes nothing less than an attempt to induce an abortion. A lot of times it is mothers who are trying to hurt their daughters for being pregnant. One of the cases, and the last one for this guest presentation, is when a 7-month pregnant 16-year-old was pre-warned by her mother of a plan that she would be killed by a third party that was instigated by her father and brother. The younger brother alerted his mother that the father was coming to Pakistan to kill her. So the mother who warned her and the kid who was pregnant, and as a result, the police tried protecting both of them. And the idea was that the mother was being punished because she failed to keep her daughter in line. And in the end, they're tainted with the same brush. Going back to the slides, I guess just to represent what I do and what Faithless Hijabi does whenever this opens up. Basically, Faithless Hijabi, when it was introduced 2 years ago, it was mostly about putting stories out there because it was one of the safest way to do things, like, have people submit their stories anonymously and we would put it out there. And what we realized is there was a lot of pattern in our stories. Everybody came from different parts of the world, brought up in the West in different families, from liberal families to very conservative families, people living in, like myself, in East Africa, but also other people living in the Middle East. We had so many things that aligned. Some people weren't forced to wear hijab, but were always, I guess, were always put down for not wearing it, and a lot of it then resulted in religious abuse trauma. One way that at Faithless Hijabi we help is I help mentor them with financial and emotional independency. What was apparent to us that if the women were not financially independent and lived with their mothers, there was a higher, or their families, there was a higher risk of abuse in that way. And a lot of times, if they're not given the opportunity to study beyond high school or primary school, they're kind of trapped in a house where their only purpose in life is to get married and likely to fall into forced or arranged marriage. And kind of then a lot of them think that maybe their arranged marriage is going to be their savior, and that could be that is not always the case, especially if they're getting married to other Muslims who can be quite religious and abusive. And if they're cousins, I don't think there's a large difference. With that, I refer them to mental health practitioners who specialize in trauma and religious abuse. I'm not a professional myself, so the idea is that we will start paying initial sessions, 6 sessions for every person who needs some emotional support and talk to a professional and can't afford it. And a lot of it is globally, especially in countries like Pakistan, because they can't really talk to other Pakistanis about their apostasy and their descent or the trauma that they have at home. They would prefer to do it with therapists outside Pakistan. And then going back to what we do with storytelling, we just started 2 podcast channels. It's on YouTube. We have Life After Islam, where we talk to not only women, men, couples, just understanding different aspects of their journey. Some of them are liberal Muslims, some of them are Salafis and very conservative, and others come from an in-between range. And the second one is Support Corner, where we have half-an-hour segments of myself and my co-host Kada, where we talk about questions such as the afterlife, how we process grief, how we look at how we would, like, what advice, and not professional advice, but what support can we give to ex-Muslims in Muslim countries, like learning English is one of them, and different things like understanding women's issues in terms of sexuality, dating, or, a lot of times, because I have noticed this with a lot of girls, is they're quite vulnerable when they leave and they've never had alcohol before. So sometimes their first instinct is, let me get drunk. And they don't know how to drink carefully or drink safely and end up being victims of sexual assault by sometimes none other than other ex-Muslims, or even families. And we put them in quite a lot of risk if I think they're not careful or don't know how to navigate around their situation. And then we started an Arabic series specifically for women in the Middle East, talking about, the last time we spoke about sex and sexuality in Saudi Arabia, which I'm sure pissed off a lot of people because they talked about how they would leave home, how their parents had groomed them to get married. And it was great to see that other women could relate to it. And other women had submitted their stories as well, or their experiences as well, and their suggestions for different women living in environments that are quite restrictive. And that is the end of my presentation. So I guess I'll leave the floor to questions that you have.
Let me, I've got some comments. First of all, it was very enlightening, very interesting. I have to say that for some reason, I had the feeling that this honor killing is something that is very Middle Eastern. I didn't understand how widespread it is.
It is. It happens
Islamic
a lot.
communities.
It happens a lot in the West as well. A lot of the times it's always covered up. Very recently, I was trying to help a girl in Sweden, but she ended committing suicide because she was, one, abused by her parents. She was burnt on her face by her parents, went to the hospital, and somehow she managed to take her life away because she was so traumatized. She was 14 or 15 at the time. Yeah, she was 15 at the time. And this was all quite recent. So a lot of the times it happens within insular communities in the West as well, because they have support from other community members, or they try living a more, I guess, a more stringent lifestyle because they don't want to be influenced by the West. The way I was brought up, and mine was very unique, that I wasn't in a Western country, so there were no progressive values. I was in an African country, but I never got to experience the African culture as such. So it was like the Indians or the Middle East or the Arabs moved to East Africa and just kept within their community. They, like, my Swahili was so bad, it's better now, but I never really got to understand African music or African TV shows. It was more Indian based or more Muslim based, and that's it. That was my network.
Another comment that I was thinking of, you were talking about that you're teaching Muslims girls how to behave in the secular world, and in your podcast, and that's something that is very interesting. We don't, in the Judaism, we don't have honor killing, but problems like ultra-Orthodox women and guys that left the religions, I think are very similar stories, and it's very interesting to compare them. A few years ago, I met with a group of ex-Muslims in Tel Aviv. We all drank beer and ate pork. It was very exciting to see it, but it was amazing for me to sit by them and to hear their stories about what they are facing when they left the religion, and how their family reacted toward them. And for me, it's interesting because one of the other stuff that I'm doing instead, not only the atheist movement, but I'm also volunteering in a group that is called Hillel. It's a place where ultra-Orthodox, ex-ultra-Orthodox not teens, but early adults, usually in their 20s, are becoming seculars, and I think they're facing the exact same problems. And that's something very interesting to compare those stories, because, you know, it's actually the same. It's the same difficulties, it's the same problems. And, you know, sitting by them and hearing their stories, I could relate to all of them. It was very interesting.
Yeah, something that we weren't taught when you're growing up as a Muslim and a woman as well is it's not necessarily behavior, but it's more acceptance as well. There's no a step-by-step guide. Like, we're not even given sexual education. We're not even told what actually happens when you get your period. We just don't talk about it. So there are a lot of times when you have that freedom, you don't really know how to drive it. And if you're young, that's even worse. So my sister recently came out to me as a lesbian and an atheist, and she's 13. And that is so new. And she has a girlfriend. And I'm like, I was not even thinking, but she's really smart, but she's not allowed to talk to me. She's not really allowed to spend much time with me because I gave her links of books like The Selfish Gene, Homo Deus, nothing to do with God particularly. It was just science books, and she wasn't allowed to read them. And she was like, her access was revoked. So, you know, like, I think my parents, or actually it's my older sibling, they're so scared that now that I have left, other people will follow, and they have followed, which is good because I come from a very small community. It's not the most dangerous community. It is quite toxic, but it's hard to live your life in that community. And I left at a very young age. So it made sense for me to eventually fit in, even as a Muslim, being in a secular world. When I'd first left Tanzania, I didn't know you could be a Muslim and not wear a hijab. I didn't know you could do that at all, because all I'd seen around me were Muslims who wear hijab. That's it. And if people didn't wear hijab, they weren't really Muslims. So to see somebody pray and then remove her prayer clothes and then go out, I was so shocked. And that's what led to me wanting to remove it, if not abandon my faith. Somebody asked a question on how is the subject of honor killing prominent in Iran and atheism as well. Armin can maybe correct me on this, but I don't remember him living in Iran for quite recently. It was a long time ago. But from what I could read, there were some, in Iran, there are some articles that kind of forgive family members for committing those crimes, and they let them go. Is that true, Armin?
Well, actually, I know more about this from after leaving Iran than when I was in Iran. I was because I was in Iran till age 21, but I was in a liberal bubble in Iran. When I left Iran, I was more involved with the activists in Iran. So, but yeah, the punishment for killing your daughter is much less in Iran than killing your son. And you know, and this, it's interesting because last month we had 3 honor killings in Iran, and for a lot of the honor killings, the father goes to the police and admits it with kind of like as a bragging right. Like the punishment is not severe, and I think the fact that it's more of an honor because they're accepting the punishment, it seems like, as if like this is not a big deal, like it was worth it. So yeah, the punishment is like something that they see as worth, as something that they're able to pay, given the fact that they defended their family's honor.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening with that was also like the husband who went in, and from what I could read on some of the UN reports, which I'm hoping are accurate, is especially if the woman has had an affair and the husband kills her for having an affair, it is completely justified in a way, because you know she was wrong, and yeah, you didn't have to kill her, but at the same time you're not going to get the same punishment as somebody else would for murder. So I think that's how, like Armin said, they cheat the system in a way because they were acting in accordance of saving the family's honor.
Yeah, and your daughter is, without them saying it, is kind of seen as your property.
Yeah.
So there's really, like, when you kill somebody, the crime is against. If you kill someone's daughter or wife, the crime is against the male own. They don't mention it, but it's kind of like Islamically is understood that the crime is against the male owner of that property. So if you kill your own daughter, you technically didn't do anybody any wrong because it was yours to begin with. But again, they don't mention this in Iran because nobody will spell it out like that, because it's even in Iran's culture, it was being seen like they understand it without saying it. Another thing is that this is technically supposed to be a sin in Islam to kill your own daughter. Like the Muslims would keep saying that, well, this is a sin. But again, the laws are the punishment for it is so biased that you could get away.
You have to pay blood money to the family if somebody else kills them. So if it's you killing your daughter, who are you going to pay it to because they're your property?
Exactly.
I'm wondering if anybody else had questions.
Actually, I do. First of all, I mean, it was a very important and a very interesting, well-presented talk. First, I mean, you are speaking about the phenomena of honor abuse, which is also well known in Israel and in many other places. And because this talk is basically in the framework of atheism and religion, I would like to ask if you can pinpoint or frame, I mean, the phenomena of honor abuse can actually be seen within the realms of religion, but also in the realms of an immigration phenomena, familial dynamics. I mean, can you, I mean, sort of
Yeah. Which is why I thought it was important to identify what honor was, not just like the whole honor-based abuse, because honor is quite relevant outside religious communities as well. It does imply, it does kind of go through that landscape and what communities find honor to be, I guess, a relevant or a more prominent part of their dynamics. And immigration is definitely one of them. Like in the case of the girl in Sweden, I think the idea was, I think the girl stopped praying, or she may have said she doesn't believe and she was forced to. And that culture kind of moved, you can put people in different countries, but there is a lot of integration problems that I think we face in Europe specifically, and maybe in Australia, but we don't see as much in Australia, or I haven't heard of it. But I think we fail with our integration tactics, and we fail to identify the little things that prevent girls to their freedom. Something like Sweden has laws on every person should, or like every girl or boy should know how to swim. And the way some religious people get away from it is, well, my daughter is a Muslim, she's not allowed to see other men, so we're not going to let her swim. And therefore she's denied that right. And again, a crime of honor. And that does kind of abuse her right of freedom that are, that are given to her by the state. But you can't exactly challenge it, because, if you do that, you're an Islamophobe. Or if you try, I guess, if you try adjusting your laws to accommodate women-only pools, there are always so many other barriers to it. So the work that I do, I work with people who live in the West and obviously the East, and it is so heartbreaking to hear them have no other option. They're just denied that right to study. Recently, I was talking to somebody from Somalia, and his sister wasn't allowed to study after primary school. So he got the sister was there only to serve her brother, because the father wasn't in the picture, for them to then go to like high school, university, but that was her role. So making sure the chores are done at home, making sure the laundry is done, making sure that he is well fed and he is slept well, because he is a breadwinner. And to a point that when I said women are the perpetrators, a lot of the times, even if you are an ex-Muslim, or even if you have left religion, you carry a lot of misogyny with you. You carry a lot of sexism with you. You carry all those, I think just your disbelief in God doesn't warrant you to a more rational way of living life. It should, like if you think about it, you should be able to apply rationality in different aspects, but it does take quite a while to unlearn a lot of the ideas that we have, especially with gender-defined roles.
Yeah, and I think also that transitions tend people to go to where they know. I mean, you may live religion, but you'll cling even unconsciously to patterns that because you feel acquainted and safe within them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't eat pork for a very long time, only because I thought it was bad for my tummy. And that was these are the small things that I had to slowly start questioning on what they meant. And which is why the training people on how to be on living in a secular world or in a non-religious world is so important, because sometimes a lot of them go through extremes to run away from their trauma and to ignore their trauma instead of acknowledge and work through it. And it's really nice seeing somebody who's worn a hijab to not wearing a hijab and the freedom they embody. But at the same time, that freedom is a great representation of their change. However, they haven't acknowledged the steps that it has taken them. And, a lot of times they ignore the little things that you were told as a child. Like, if you don't eat this, you're going to go to hell. If you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. And it eventually builds up to quite a bit of struggle. And I feel like personally, I am constantly working with a therapist to identify things or relationships how I have seen in the past, because I was raised to be my father's daughter or my husband's wife, and that was my role. And my family, we're still pretty cool. We still have a relationship. They're religious. They pray 5 times a day. But my dad was also somebody who was talked into taking my younger sister to get a tattoo. That never happens in Muslim families. I can't even imagine Jewish families doing that. But he basically, he was basically talked into, if you want to be your daughter's friend, do it with her versus, her running away and not doing it. So I think that way I can see them change. But I was the first one leaving, and that was quite difficult for them to understand. Let alone my sister, who will, I hope, comes out to them as a lesbian in the near future, or maybe 10 years later.
Well, it seems you suddenly sort of started cracking some sort of a glass ceiling for her, but it would probably be still quite emotional.
Yeah. I think they're learning to disagree and still love people. And my family I think I mentioned them before. So Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general who was killed by Trump, they're diehard fans of Iran. So I had a nephew that was born a few days ago, and my dad wanted to name him Qasem Soleimani. I had to fight against that. I had to go nope, we're not naming him that.
Yeah. It's saving a child, basically. In a Western country.
Yeah, it's really hard because from their perspective, if I tell them Qasem Soleimani is a terrorist, he's like, oh, you've been brainwashed by the West. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't think you will go out there and kill somebody, because they don't even agree with the idea of apostasy and blasphemy punishments. Let's hope that your parents don't watch this YouTube video. Oh, they're not going to watch it. But yeah, no, it is definitely interesting still having religious parents and trying to have a relationship, especially because I'm one of 6 kids.
And my father actually came from a religious family, so I know from a secondary level what you're talking about. It's very complicated. A lot of times.
Yeah. I'm just gonna paste my YouTube channel just in case you guys want to stalk me, listen to us, spread it around, because honestly, the idea is I know a lot of times we're being told that the Zionists pay us, which is not true. But it would be nice to just have people give us different perceptions, and if any of our content applies to other Jewish women who have left or still identify with the faith but have doubts, it would be nice to understand the parallels with different religion.
Zara, thank you very much for I think it's an eye-opening and very disturbing presentation, I might say. And I do see the resemblance between, as a subset of honor-based abuse, as a subset of domestic abuse, okay? And it seems like in Islamic countries, the domestic abuse is like state legitimized, like the whole state and the whole family actually supports it, which is unlike what happens, at least here in Israel. For the sake of disclosure, I'm a social worker. I deal with domestic abuse, and I'm also a trauma specialist in a sense. And we make a lot of efforts. There's a lot of investment that we put here in Israel to actually counter domestic violence. And we do know that domestic violence has no really borders. We can see it in every parts of the society. Maybe the rich, the poor, the educated, whatever gender, at least social they are. Parts of our culture there is. So I wonder, in a sense, and I do not know if there's any research about domestic violence in atheist communities, but it makes me think about it. I would like to, if you can elaborate a bit more about the way that you are organized internationally, because we are actually dealing with it locally here in Israel, and you have some kind of an international type of approach to actually tackle domestic violence, and it's very intriguing for me to hear more about it.
So I wouldn't say that I work with hands-on with domestic violence and saving them. A lot of it is connecting them with organizations like yours locally. So I have a list of people, or I'll try contacting people, understanding. So the one thing that people come to me and they have in common is they're women. I understand them, and I know that they're ex-Muslim, and they're safe with me. So, I know their little secret. And then the next things are what's happening, what's your issue. Some of them it can be quite dangerous, some of them not as much, some of them that's why we have the support corner videos if it's just a confusion thing or a support thing and a mental thing. But when it comes to physical, we'll try. We're not that big. It is a one-woman run show, and I have a few people helping me on social media. But the idea is to connect them to the right people. And what I have to do moving forward is countries like Pakistan also have they also have social workers that are not public, and people don't know about them for the reason that they need to stay private and support these women if they go through domestic violence, or if they don't want to come out to their families as apostate. So there are women who are oppressed by state, and they have other organizations that help internally. So my role is mostly, connecting them, helping support them mentally, and then connecting them to mental health professionals. It's a lot of being able to talk about it and normalizing it, or even just being able to connect them with the right people as well. So in terms of global, we are registered in Australia, but we work with women who come from different aspects. So I had a case in Palestine where the girl wasn't allowed to go overseas. Like, she was not on house arrest, but she had to have a male guardian in Palestine. I don't know where she lived, but I think maybe it was Ramallah or Bethlehem. I can't remember. But she couldn't basically go for further studies, or even for like a 1-month program overseas, because her father wouldn't let her. So I think in that situation, it was mostly like I found other Palestinians who could help her out, but then it was eventually her decision to stay and not go through the abuse. I mean, stay and go through the abuse and not make it worse.
Thank you very much. Maybe it's an interesting idea also to bind to our local Israeli help facilities that we have. So if you have in touch with other local Israeli Arabs or even the West Bank, maybe it can be a good tie.
Yeah.
And I bless you for the work. It's amazing.
You.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I guess this is the end of my part then. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. It was very, very interesting. I'm really happy that we thought about having you here.
Thank you.
We weren't able to bring you for our last conference, but hopefully for the next one in 2021. 2022 doesn't count. But
Can
maybe
I come
next
as well?
year.
I want to use this as an excuse to see Zara again.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
I think the one person I have met more times living overseas is Armin. We met up randomly in Sydney, twice, and then twice in London.
Yes. And Amsterdam.
And Amsterdam. In a space of a year and a half, by the way.
Yeah.
That was just a year and a half.
Maybe now, I don't know, maybe they will have cheaper flights after this COVID thing. Maybe we won't have any flights. Who knows? Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just answer one of the questions on religious parents?
Sure.
Dealing with religious parents when your siblings want to follow your path. Because my sibling is really like, she's 13, I'm going to tell her to study, and then I'm basically going to find her a way to come to the UK so she can just study here. But in other cases, I would always start establishing boundaries. A lot of the times, I'm sure maybe this is the case, and Alan, you've worked with a lot of young people, I hope. We're not taught to establish boundaries. What we talk about, how we talk privacy, none of it is being used because we're made to be reliant and we owe our lives to our parents. I think from a very young age to establish boundaries is important, to understand that this is my private space and that I want to be alone for a while is always a good change moving forward, because when you do come out as an atheist, or when you do come out having doubts, you've established a boundary where people basically give you your space to explore, or that people understand that you're not going to talk to them or be abusive to them, or are not going to accept being abused. That's a step forward anyway, but other times it's always really hard for different people. That was it.
People are asking to stay and talk, so we can do that. Feel free to stay on the Zoom meeting. We'll keep it open for a while. Thank you very much again, Armin. Thank you very much, Zara.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Maybe we'll have more Zoom meetings. It's a good way. And on different topics. And as we discussed with Armin, let's hope that this will be a good start to having cross-national, cross-borders discussions to open up to atheists, to make us atheists more aligned with each other, even if we can agree about what we disagree about. So it can be very interesting and maybe open a new opportunity, a new way for discussions. So again, thank you very much. Whoever wants to stay is welcome. We can continue talking until we fall asleep. Okay.
I just want to say, it's amazing to me how Israel as a country, as a small, tiny country, is always relevant in every discussion, politic and religion. It's always like when it comes to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, Israel is always relevant. When it comes to politics, the difference, the relationship between religion and politics, ethnicity and politics, Israel is always used in arguments on all sides. When it comes to terrorism and national security, Israel is always in every discussion. And now even when it comes to Hinduism, Israel becomes very relevant, because just like Christianity and Islam are not race-based religions, what I call ethno-religions, but Judaism and Hinduism are ethno-religions, and both the right-wing governments in both countries are trying to use ethno-religions as a way to promote, their agenda. Both the Hindutva country in India and some right-wing people in Israel, and so now Israel is also very relevant to Hinduism and how that is being used as a political tool. So it's very interesting to me how such a tiny country is it becomes relevant in so many different discussions at a global level.
Well, welding religion and nationality is something, I mean, as an Israeli, you learn to live with that all your life. I mean, at first you think this is the only options, and only later you realize that this can actually be separated. And I agree. I mean, it adds some sort of complexities to both religion and politics. I mean, a lot of people find it hard to sort of separate, or even are unaware of the need to separate between the religious realm, if you are religious, and the nationality aspect in your life. It definitely complicates discourse in Israel.
Yeah. Can I say something else if nobody else is saying anything?
Yeah. I just want to add that it's not surprising that Israel finds itself relevant in many places, because it's a junction of history, of religion, of conflict, of almost everything in the history of humanity.
Right.
Always saying that we started the mess. We invented the religion, so it's our fault, and now we are involved in everything.
That's not how I said it. You're using the I said it was the birth Israel. It was the birthplace of Abrahamic religion. It could also become its graveyard because of all the evidence for why their fairy tales is within Israel, right? So, but I never said it was anyone's fault. I don't blame people for anything that happened hundreds of years ago.
This is the Muslim in Armin coming out.
No, that's not.
It was kind of a joke.
That was Amir's wording.
I wasn't serious.
Muslim in Amir.
Armin is really bad at jokes. He doesn't get jokes.
No,
it just...
I just am okay. Never mind. But no, but yeah. So Christians think like Jerusalem. You know, for many years, they thought Jerusalem is theirs, and Jews think the same thing, and Muslims think the same thing. And I'm saying that atheists need to claim it should be. Atheists should be claiming Jerusalem, because all the evidence for why all three Abrahamic religions is fake is in Jerusalem. So it should be claimed by atheists. But another thing that I think we could use Israel as a role model is the idea of how to be culturally, how to accept the cultures that comes from that religion, from a religion, without accepting the belief. So there's a difference between, for example, like a lot of people are trying to keep mentioning cultural Muslims. Cultural Muslims is a new thing. We didn't have those before. But there's a difference between being a reformed Muslim and a cultural Muslim, and people think that they are similar, but they're completely the opposite of each other. A cultural Muslim, to me, like a cultural Jew, is somebody who doesn't believe in the religion, but wants to keep some of the tradition. A reformed Muslim is somebody who keeps the belief without wanting to keep some of the tradition, right? And they're completely the opposite of each other. And it's so interesting that to me that to see some people use it interchangeably as if they're the same thing. I like the idea of a cultural Muslim, because the problem with the religion is it's not the food, the dancing, the art. The problem is the belief. Okay, so keeping the tradition, keeping the things that you find beautiful about the history of your religion, the practices. If that helps you let go of the belief easier, if we introduce that to more people, to more Muslims, that you know what, you like the tradition, you like the community. Well, you can keep all that. It's fine. Just get rid of the belief. The belief is the problem. So the idea of a cultural Muslim, if that's being introduced, I think that's helpful. And the fact that the cultural Jew is a common thing, the cultural Muslim isn't. So that's a model that we could show to people, that we even have rabbis apparently who don't believe in religion, which is weird, but it's a new for a lot of Muslims that's unimaginable. So making that a norm is would be a good thing in the Muslim community.
So we should encourage the religious to decouple the belief from the tradition.
Right. I mean, for the ones that have an emotional attachment to because a lot of people are emotionally tied to the traditions, and they think that the challenge to the belief means that they have to say goodbye to all of these things. And if we tell them that, well, you don't actually have to, if you could be skeptical about the beliefs without giving up on the traditions, it might make it easier for a lot of them to start questioning the belief.
Might be some issue with that, because many atheists like to argue about the existence of God and the justification for this or that ritual. And they also tie it together with the tradition. So if you drop the God belief, you also drop the reason to perform the ritual or to celebrate a holiday or something like that.
Well, yeah, that's stupid. Of course, there's going to be some issues. None of these will ever be without any issues. But my argument is that's nonsense, because if I read Harry Potter, if I go to Harry Potter theme park, if I have like a wand and wearing Harry Potter costumes or anything like that, if I do any of those things, none of that requires me to believe that the Harry Potter world is real, and I can enjoy all of that without necessarily believing in any of that. If you could do that, and again, a lot of cultural Jews have demonstrated to us that it's very possible. They go through all the motions. They bond with their community by doing all the cultural stuff, and they don't believe. I mean, why not? Why not do it if it's something fun, if it's something that you enjoy? Why do atheists come up with unnecessary rules like religious people do? I mean, do atheists not celebrate Christmas without having to believe in Jesus? What else are we going to do? Are we going to say you cannot say Thursday because if you're an atheist, because Thursday means Thor's day and Thor is a god, and as atheists we shouldn't name anything after a god? Like, how far are we going to go with these ridiculous limitations?
There is an excellent example right here in Israel. It's the phenomenon that now it's practically dead, called kibbutz, if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
It's the old settlements that settled the land before Israel was declared a state. And I live in one such place. And what the people did is they kind of rebranded the tradition. They changed it to be more about the place, about the people, about the land, and completely dropped the God belief. And that kind of worked.
Yeah, because the tradition are not the source of the problem. The belief is the source of the problem, right? Nobody, especially because without the beliefs, you're not going to do the harmful traditions, right? You're only going to, if you don't have the belief, you're only going to do the traditions that is fun, that is full of celebration and fun. But you're probably not going to be like, well, I don't believe in Allah, but I'm still going to throw acid in your face because that's a fun tradition. Like you're not going to keep. The belief is the source of the traditions that are harmful. Without the beliefs, you're only going to do the traditions that are not harmful.
But Armin, one thing that I wonder if you can elaborate a little more about. You're saying that the belief is the problem, and I mean, I'm living in Jerusalem, and I meet a lot of people who believe. And some of them, not a lot, but some of them can be very tolerant and very positive people. I mean, is belief in itself a problem in your view?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course it's a problem. You don't have to... I mean, it's not an extraordinary claim that I'm making. any form of belief system that is not based on reality is harmful. And just because, and first of all, when we talk about harmful, it's very interesting because when we say harm from religion, people think about tolerance and, suicide bombing and war. The harm from religion, that's actually, those types of harm for religion is very rare. The harm from religion, we get fucked by religion in so many more ways than war and intolerance and suicide and terrorism and stuff like that. People just making decisions on day to day, small decisions, big decisions, political decisions, non-political decisions, based on an understanding of reality that is not based on evidence or based on anything that is actually real, of course it's going to give you suboptimal results, whether it's religion or any other belief system that is not based on reality. People, and also the fact that even if you come up with examples of people who are not making any decisions based on the belief system that they claim to ascribe to, what they are doing is they are spreading an ideology that is harmful. I mean, when most of the planet believe that slavery is okay and slavery is a way of life and slavery is obviously that they believe that obviously society cannot function without slavery. Well, most people were not slave owners, right? Most people were not slave owners. Most people could not afford slave. But the idea that slavery is normal and it's okay obviously provides opportunity, provides an environment where slavery is used as an institution. Like you cannot, the small minority of religious people that use religion in a much more significant harmful way in politics, in war, and in other in economic decisions. They do get that legitimacy by the high number of people that label themselves as followers of that religion, even if they don't do much that makes it seem like they are part of that religion, just by giving it authority and legitimacy. But again, it's very interesting because, for example, here in Philippines, a lot of people think condoms are not a good thing because apparently the last pope said that it was, condoms are bad, right? And Philippines is a country that is suffering from overpopulation, and that belief system is very harmful to a country like Philippines. And for example, when it comes to, but most people, when you talk about the harms of Catholic religion, they don't think about that. They think about priests molesting children because that is more newsworthy. That is more like headline grabbing. But the idea of like, hey, maybe condoms are a bad idea, that coming from the Catholic Church has harmed a lot more people in countries like Philippines and a lot of African countries than priests molesting children. That has astronomically, but people don't think about that because it's not as newsworthy, right? And even when it comes to Islam, like how many people think about the idea that in Turkey there was a fight against interest rates by Erdogan and other people because apparently like they think that's un-Islamic, and the cost to the economy of Turkey, when they try to have economic policies that was against the bank's interest rate, that has been very devastating. But people don't think about that when it comes to the cost of Islam. They think about explosions. They don't think about, if you like, oh, look at these Muslims, they're so tolerant, they're not hurting anybody. But how many hours have this father spent inside a mosque, wasting his time and energy, maybe instead of spending time with his daughter, right? How many times did they save their money to go to the Hajj instead of going on a trip with their family? How many hours did they spend praying instead of something? If they knew that this is all fake, maybe they would have done something productive. What would that all the hours wasted on prayer? What's the cost of all of that in productivity? Has anybody ever measured that? How many people that were in love cannot be together because of the religious reasons? Are we counting that as a cost? How many people feel disgusted of who they are because they're gay? Are we adding all the cost of misery of all that, self-hatred. It's not just like, oh, tolerance and war and stuff. Like the cost to religion is high, very high, even among the tolerant ones.
I mean, how would you?
One second. You're talking about a lot of maybes, and everything you said can be applied to any kind of idea, really.
Wrong idea. Yes, I agree.
Okay, wrong idea. How many people wasted their life reading Harry Potter when they could, I don't know.
That's not a waste.
That is not a waste. So ask a religious person, he'll tell you this is not a waste of time. I enjoy it. It gives me, it helps me to be a better person.
Well, they're wrong.
Say something about that?
No, can I respond? First of all, if you make decisions for your life on what you enjoy and what you want to do based on correct information, then that's based on if it's based on okay. So here's the thing. Let me give you the Harry Potter example, right? If somebody thinks, well, Harry Potter is not real, and I'm making decisions to entertain myself based on the fact I know this is fiction, I need entertainment in my life, this is giving me utility, this is fun for me, and you read Harry Potter, that is not a waste. But if I tell you that, you know what, actually wizards are real, and this book is a guide for you to how to maybe go, become a wizard yourself. This is a real story of someone's life, and all of a sudden you're now picking up this book, and maybe you wouldn't have read Harry Potter before I convinced you that this is actually real. And not only now you're actually reading the book and spending so much more time that you would have to try to decipher how to find these wizards, where to go to school. You want to join their community. Now, even if you don't, maybe you decide to actually go and invest money to find Hogwarts or something like that. Now, the fact that you think this is real, you're making decisions based on a lie, and the results of that decisions are going to be a lot more costly than if you were operating based on facts, obviously. But somebody else wants to say something?
I mean, let me try to sharpen this question. I believe we're talking about the same thing here. The shared idea that you said that the shared idea of religion can be very
not just religion, any false belief system.
Yes. How would you elaborate this question, this issue generally, to people, let's say, of the Gulf area? Because to say that they are miserable in general might be not accurate.
Oh, okay. So you guys, you need to listen to what I'm saying, because you're saying things that I didn't say, right? This is not a very extraordinary claim. If you make decisions based on true beliefs, you are more likely to get what you want out of life than making decisions based on false belief, right? This is an obvious fact. The example I give is, imagine if we are looking for our treasure, right? We have a treasure, it's hidden somewhere, and then you have mountains and you have trees and river, and I have a map and you have a map, and we're both looking for our own treasure. Our treasure is different, right? Everybody has their own goals in life, right? But my map is completely wrong. Like, the rivers are not in the right place, the trees are not in the right place, the mountains are not in the right place. Your map, however, is not completely accurate, right? There's some flaws in it, but it's more reflective of what the reality on the ground is, right? Everything is roughly in the right place, right? There are times that I might actually find my treasure before you do, right? But you are working with a better map. You are more likely to be able to find your way to get to where you want than I am, right? Our belief systems are a map of reality. Our belief systems are our understanding of how the world works and it operates. If you work based on a false belief system, the society functions in a less healthier manner. People work in a less healthier manner. It's less likely for us to get better outcomes if we're working based on false assumptions on what is real and what is not real.
So you're actually saying that there must be eventually some sort of critical fall down of this system in order to prove your point.
What do you mean? I'm saying that my claim is very simple and it's obvious. It's better to believe more true things and to disbelieve in more false things. Like the more true, the more the better understanding of reality that you have, the more that your belief system is based on evidence, based on scientific analysis, based on logic, and less based on faith and revelation, and other forms of, and other falsehoods. The better we are together, on average, we are better as a society.
Yeah, but you use the word religion and belief systems interchangeably, which are not equal. I mean,
I said okay. Let me clarify.
Okay.
I said religion is a subcategory of false belief systems. Okay, religion is not every single false belief system. So if you think about a container of false belief systems, religion is one of them, but not all of them. It's a subcategory of false belief systems. Yes.
But Armin, let me challenge you just this once more, because I will be having to go soon as well. I mean, I agree with you in a sense that the world would have been an easier place to live in if we were not having to deal with religion. But it's very much out there. And it's a strong sentiment that people have or adopt sometimes during their lifetimes. I mean, can you think, under the assumptions that we cannot turn everyone into atheists, at least not in the near future, that you can see some sort of a form of religion that maybe we could live with, we could be okay with, even if we don't agree with those guys.
Okay, so what you said doesn't negate anything I said.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so first of all, obviously we're not going to be able to get rid of religion for I don't know how long, right? But obviously in a world where 10% of the people believe in less false belief systems, we're better off than in a world that only 2%. Like if you could get from 2% to 3%, you have made the society a healthier society. Okay? You don't have to, just because that's progress. So just because you say that, oh, well, most people are religious and we're not going to get to 100%, well, maybe 100% is like too big of a milestone for you to consider. Like religion is harmful. So if you could go from 2% religious, 2% lack of belief in religion to 3%, you have made a lot of progress. That's great. You made 150% increase in non-religious people. Okay, that's a huge progress. Okay, so it's not a binary thing. It's not an all or none thing that we're fighting for here.
Yeah, I agree with you. But this was not my
yeah, no, question. I just wanted to point that out because. But the second part of what you said is like, can we live with religious people? My intolerance of religions does not mean I'm intolerant of religious people. Those are completely separate things, right? Yeah, of course we have to tolerate people. We have to tolerate people if everything they believe in is wrong, right? Like, of course. How does one follow the other one? What makes you think me saying the world would be a better place without religion? Not just religion. The world would be a better place if more people believe less in false information, false. How is that fact mean that we need to be intolerant of religious people? It actually means the opposite.
No. This was not what I was saying.
What you said, why can't we just accept people?
Let me just rephrase my question so
okay.
we can be more focused. Basically, what I was saying is, suppose that we cannot persuade all religious people to live religion. It's quite obvious. Then, by what way? I mean, we can still reach to them to some extent. I mean, it's not binary, even in the sense that turning someone to atheist or leaving him a fundamentalist. I mean, you can speak to a religious person and maybe try to propagate him to be a more tolerant religious guy, or I don't know, leave some of the ideas. I mean, can you think of a religious person that you can be okay, more okay with the fact that he is religious?
So that's what I was responding to. So I don't know why you said I didn't understand. That's exactly what I'm responding to. That I understood your question perfectly the first time. Okay. Why would you think that just because I do not agree with somebody, why wouldn't I be okay with them? That was actually the entire point of the first talk that we had, that our disagreements does not mean that we can't get along, right? Most people that I admire are religious people, even though I think the fact that they believe in religion is absolute horseshit. And also a lot of religious people can get along with me, even though they think atheism is horseshit. The fact that I could get along with them does not mean that I have to stop calling their religion horseshit. You know, if they can, I think that a religion is horseshit, and I can still get along with them. And our friendship should not. They should not require me to stop calling their religion horseshit for us to be able to get along. They could call atheism horseshit, and I'll call their religion horseshit, and we'll be tolerant of each other, and we accept each other, and we can be friends with each other, and we could even work with each other on things that we agree on, right? I think, like, if I have a Muslim friend, if they ask me, I'm like, you know what? I think Islam is horseshit, and you're wrong to believe in Islam. Oh, you believe in women's rights? Okay, I believe as well. We could fight. We could work with each other on that. Oh, you believe in gay rights? Oh, great. I believe in gay rights as well. Let's work with each other on that. Oh, does that mean that you're not going to call Islam horseshit? No, I'm still going to call Islam horseshit. I'm going to call Islam horseshit while we work with each other on the things that we agree on. You should not ask, and you are free to call atheism horseshit, and that should not stop us from working with each other.
Okay, then we're more on the same page that we have thought. I mean, what I was trying to say basically is that we should, I think that religion is maybe too of a general level. I mean, you can maybe need to target, I mean, at least on the branding level, fundamentalism, intolerance, some of the byproducts of that may come out of a religious view that are actually more harmful than maybe other aspects of religion, or the harmful things that may be clinched to religious beliefs.
So what I say, I don't wait for false ideas to be harmful before I fight them. Okay, because if you allow harmless nonsense without evidence, if you don't ask people for evidence for the things that they believe in, you're also opening the door to harmful nonsense without evidence, right? They filter, the tool you can give to people to figure out what is true or not, works regardless of the idea being harmful or not. Like, if somebody believes it, like, how many people are fighting each other over palm reading right now? There's no wars being waged in the name of palm reading, are they? But if somebody believes in palm reading, I'm going to call that as horseshit as aggressively as I would call out Islam as horseshit, right? Even though there's no terrorist attacks in the name of palm reading that are happening right now. Because you don't wait for the idea to be harmful before you attack it, right? Because if somebody believes in nonsense without evidence, even if they're harmless, they don't have what it requires them to recognize what is a good idea and what is a bad idea. So, like, if, let's say, for example, you say, oh, so these people believe in palm reading, okay? And, well, let them believe what they want. Who cares? Nobody is getting hurt. Well, somebody who believes in palm reading is also likely to believe that vaccines cause autism, right?
Not necessarily.
No, if you are gullible, yeah, of course not. That's why I said likely, right? I didn't say it necessarily. I didn't use the word necessarily. If you're gullible enough to believe in random in bullshit without evidence, you're a gullible person enough to believe in some other bullshit that might be harmful to you at some point or to your children. You're gullible enough to be taken advantage of for people's political reasons or for that or be conned, right? If I know that you believe in palm reading and you genuinely believe that's true, if you allow me, by the way, I don't force my views on anybody. If somebody shows me the green light and they're welcome to be challenged and to be talked to, I'm going to use that opportunity as for to tell them, like, well, why makes you think that this is right? Like, do you have any evidence for that? What made you convinced of this? And then I'm going to try to challenge them, because I have the opportunity. They're giving me the green light. They give me the permission to make them more skeptical of things, to maybe try to reevaluate their positions. And if you give them the tool to recognize why palm reading is nonsense, you might also give them the skill set to all of a sudden realize why, okay, the people that are telling me vaccines cause autism, okay, let me use the same tools. Why do they believe that? Where's their evidence, right? You make them a more naturally more skeptical person towards other things, right? Again, it's about the filter is critical thinking skills, right? If you remove that filter just because people are like, oh, that idea is not harmful, well, then you don't have anything else to stop them with. Once they pass that gate, then after that, where they land on, you don't have much of a say, right? That where they land on it, or you're just going to hope that they again. And it's also a little bit selfish, right? To tell, oh, it's kind of like telling people, we atheists, we get it, all this God stuff, there's no evidence of it, there's no God, they're all wrong, okay? But these other people, they're Muslims, they're, the Christians, they're idiots. Let them believe their fairy tales. Let's just hope that they believe in the version of the fairy tales that they're not harming us. As long as they're not harming us, let these barbarians, let them waste their own times with their own fairy tales. But as long as they're not coming at me, I don't care. As if like, what about them? Don't you think if they knew that this is all bullshit, they would have appreciated if somebody was pointing it out to them?
Nope.
Like, are we all? Oh, yeah.
No, they won't. They're not.
Yes. Oh no, you're wrong. You're
no,
so
not
wrong.
Always. Anyways, it's not.
Oh yeah. Nothing I'm saying is about always. Nothing I'm saying about always. But most people who actually became atheists, they even the ones that were not harmful to anybody, right? They appreciate the fact that somebody challenged them, right? So it's very interesting because people say, who are we to tell them what they believe? Let them believe what they want. That's a very hypocritical, because if you do not expose people to different views, then you are not actually letting them believe what they want. The only way for people to believe what they want is for them to be exposed to many different options and then pick what they want. If somebody is born a Muslim and they live in a bubble and they're not exposed to atheism, Christianity, Judaism, and Hinduism, they're not actually believing what they want because they haven't been given anything to choose from. So the people who are exposing them to other alternatives, they are actually the ones that are letting them believe what they want, because you're giving them multiple options to choose from. So it's funny that they're coming to us telling us that, oh, let them believe what they want. And like, yes, please let them believe what they want by providing them multiple options to choose from.
Okay, let me tell you a little story. Maybe I'll be able to show a little bit from where I'm coming from.
Okay.
In my work, there's a religious Jew, an Orthodox, and he made it his mission to make me a religious person.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I ask him, why are you not leaving me alone? I don't care. You do you and I be me. Mm-hmm. And he told me last that because I want to save you, you're doing something wrong. I want to show you. And for him, it's completely reasonable. There's not, it's a matter of knowledge, not belief, that what he's doing is trying to save me from something illogical. Mm-hmm. So when I'm talking to him, I'm not talking about religions per se, but more on grander scheme of things, like belief systems. You're talking about, when you say belief systems, you mostly think about religion, but I'm starting to think about politics, for example, or any kind of belief systems that for the person that is in that kind of thing, their logic may seem illogical for you, but you can't be the one to decide if it's moral or not, if what they're doing is good or not in the long run. For example, what you said about palm reading. Who knows? Maybe in the future, palm reading will be a cause for a war. I don't know. But who are we to decide it is something wrong? It's something harmful.
It is.
And another thing, and
can
this
I answer that?
And this would be my last 2 cents for the conversation, because I really need to go. That's why I'm barging in. I apologize. I think that when you say evidence-based, I mean, evidence-based is not a guarantee for knowledge. I mean, if you were living, for example, in the 16th century,
I have to respond to this separately because I'm going to forget what the first thing was. Okay?
In that case, I would just thank you for the conversation. I mean, it was very enlightening and eye-opening, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to meet you all, guys, and to talk. And I will wish you all good night.
Oh, sorry to see you go, because I really wanted to see the. Okay, before you go, let me just address what you're saying. Nobody says evidence-based is going to guarantee you to be get the real answer. Okay, it's just going to make it more likely. That's why I said in my example that your map of reality is, even if it's not completely accurate, it's just closer to reality. Nobody is ever going to know 100% that the belief system is actually matches objective reality 100%. We're never going to get that. If you follow evidence-based, you just know that it's closer to reality, not exactly like reality. Okay, that's what evidence-based does for you. With regards to that person, you mentioned the rabbi.
No, he's just Orthodox. Not every beard person is a rabbi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I just misremembered. That's why I didn't think every Orthodox Jew. I hope you don't think I think that.
I was joking. Yeah, I was joking.
Okay. But yeah. So first of all, if the religion is true, if let me actually talk from my perspective. Okay, from when a Muslim comes and says, like, listen, Armin, I want to convert you to Islam because I care for you. I don't want you to go to hell. Okay, I sympathize with that. I understand. That makes logical sense. If their hell is true, if their God is real, it makes logical sense for you to try to convert me to Islam. Because why wouldn't you? That would be the most moral thing to do, to save somebody from eternal hellfire. I sympathize with that. That's a kind of. The problem is that their God is not real. Okay, but if it was real, the most logical thing to do would be to try to convert me to Islam. So I understand where they would be coming from, and I appreciate that somebody cares enough for me to want to save me from eternal hell. That's a kind thing that is coming from them, right? When it comes to that person keeping trying to convert you, even though you told them to leave you alone, that's not something I advocate for. When I say we need to change religious people's opinions on things, that's only if they welcome it. Okay, only if they want to be challenged. We do not go to Muslims who hey, if Muslims say, hey, don't talk to me, I don't want to hear about your atheism, we don't go to them like, no, you have to listen, you cannot. We don't go like, no, you have to consume our content. Every single Muslim, for example, or religious person that sees our posts or watches our YouTube videos or listens to our podcast or buys our book, they chose to do that. They came to us. We didn't go to them, right? With regards to the palm reading thing, I mean, no, I mean, if you don't care about reality and you think everything could be real, yeah, there is a chance that we're wrong about everything, but we should care about what's real and what's not real. We can't just be like, well, you could be wrong. Okay, yeah, you could be wrong, but let's find out if we're wrong. We cannot look at every single claim out there as if they're equally likely just because we could be wrong about things. It matter. Objective reality is a thing, and we should always try to base our belief system with the hope and with the goal that we're moving closer to objective reality. Just because we can never get absolutely to objective reality, we can never get there, but that doesn't mean that means that every position outside of objective reality is equally valuable just because it's not objective reality itself. Obviously, the belief in, for example, you say like, well, we don't know, we can't be sure what's real and what's not real. So are we going to value the idea that vaccines are generally a good idea compared to people that say no, vaccines are harmful, and this Illuminati, it's a Zionist conspiracy to control children? That's a common idea. Are we going to treat these two ideas equally
really?
healthy?
They're common ideas?
Well, I mean, common among some really, common as in, not as in most people believe in it, but there's a lot of, what I mean is that there's a lot of people that believe that, okay?
Thing is, it's easy to see how people can get harmed from not taking their shots.
Exactly. So that what I'm saying is that it's important for us to encourage people to come up with their beliefs based on reliable methods. Again, the conclusions are not that as important as the methodology, right? Good methodologies for you to come to belief systems do not always get you the right results. They just produce more right results more often than bad methodologies. And bad methodologies to come up with your belief system sometimes give you good results, right? But the few times that the bad methodology is giving you a good result should not be used as an excuse to sell you a bad methodology. And the few times that the good methodology gives you a bad result should not give us an excuse not to sell the good methodology. The conclusion matters less than the methodology itself. The good methodology should always be promoted because it just more often gives you good results. So scientific methodologies, logic-based critical thinking skills, understanding what logical fallacies are. These need to be promoted, even though they don't guarantee you to give you the right results. And using faith, using anecdotal evidence, using tribalism, using revelations, these are bad methodologies. Sometimes they end up saying some good things, but those sometimes shouldn't be used as an excuse to promote those methodologies.
Armin, maybe it will be quick question. Do you observe a change in the inner atheistic discussion from several years ago, or maybe let's go back from the start of the new atheist movement? Do you think we are still the same group mind thinking, or do you think that there was some sort of a shift within the atheistic discussion?
Well, there's a lot of fractions now compared. Like the atheist community was a lot more united before. Right now, there's people are moving in a whole bunch of different directions, and groups are splitting apart. And a lot of people think that's a bad thing. I think that's a sign of growth. When you grow a lot, at some point there's going to be divisions. There are people who are going to be disagreeing, and some people want to focus on one thing and other people want to focus on another thing. A lot of people are like, oh, we should go back to those days where we're all focusing on religion. I'm like, well, no, good luck with that. The fact that there's so many different kinds of atheists out there, and everybody is now specializing on something specific, it's a sign that we're becoming bigger and bigger, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
As long as we can work together.
Yeah, I mean, and even as long as enough of us could work with each other, right? Because there's a lot of sometimes we're gonna say like, hey, like, can we work on this? And a lot of the groups are like, well, no, we don't want to work on that. But we're gonna find enough people that will be enough atheists that will be. You don't need to get obvious. I mean, I'm not saying you said that, but some people do say that, like, oh no, we should all get united. No, we don't all need to get united on something. As long as enough of us could get behind a movement, that movement is going to be able to find you're going to be able to find some progress.
But I mean, like the people, the elite thinkers like Sam Harris, Dawkins. You do find them, I think, in the last several years, going more on a humanistic or a spiritual area, rather than what I think maybe in the early thousands was more realism and materialistic ideology. So when I mean that the shift in the dialogue, in the discussion, I do focus mostly on the elite of the thinkers. Would you agree with this? Not?
I don't know. I just think there's so many different groups out there. I don't know if you could see that Sam Harris as like our leading. He's not like the atheist
Just
leader.
an example, yes. It's
no.
not.
Yeah, I don't know, because I just think there's just so many different kinds of us, right? And for example, when it comes to my group, there's the one that I started, which is Atheist Republic. We don't actually focus. I mean, I personally focus on that, on trying to find promote more rational ways of looking at things. But Atheist Republic as a community doesn't focus on that. Atheist Republic as a community is mostly focused on providing a community for all kinds of atheists, even if they're not rational thinkers, right? My personal focus is different from my group's focus, my Atheist Republic's focus, because what and again, you could do both. You could do one, you could do some other things. When it comes to Atheist Republic, what we're trying to do is make atheists feel like they're not alone, and that there are other atheists out there that who support them, and we're trying to provide a home for atheists even if they are not rational, right? So the goal for that is different. We don't think like for you know you need to be, even if you're an atheist that believes in ghosts, you're an atheist, you don't believe in God, but you believe in ghosts, you believe in palm reading, you believe in, I don't know, some conspiracy theories, but you're an atheist. You have a home in Atheist Republic. And if somebody comes after you because you're an atheist, I don't care how stupid you are about so many other things. Atheist Republic's mission is to try to bring attention to you and try to find ways to get other atheists to help support you, right? That's so again, these two things are not mutually exclusive. We could chew our gum and walk at the same time, right? If some atheist community wants to focus on promoting rationality, that's great. If some other atheist community wants to focus on some other things, that's also great as well. Like, we don't have to all act like we're part of one tribe that we all have to walk in the same direction.
Great.
Does that answer your question, or did I
I think you took it for a little bit to a direction that I didn't meant to imply there, but nevertheless, I agree with your idea. I think that this division grows us, yes, empowers us.
To be more accurate, to be more direct to your question, it's really hard to come up with a sense of where everybody is heading, given that everybody's moving in a different direction, right? And given that we can't point to a couple of people as representative of, and the atheist community. And given that that answer itself is very different from one country to another, right? So the direction of what atheist community is doing in Iran, it could be completely different from what the atheist community is doing in the United States. And even within Iran, there seem to be moving in 4 different directions. So if I can have a good answer, even in one country, how could I have an answer for that on a global scale, right? So maybe the short answer is I don't know. and I don't think anybody can tell right now, unless somebody does a statistical analysis of what's going on.
All right. Thank you.
This was fun, by the way. Thank you guys for having me. I hope I didn't come off as too shy. Did you think that I was coming off as aggressive at all in anything you said? I hope not. Shay? Shy? Fred. Shay is speaking
might,
from us.
Like a coffee or something.
Yeah, he's speaking. He apparently he's reporting from hell. So, Amir, you're muted. I don't know.
Okay.
All right. Let's. I'm gonna go to sleep soon because it's like 5 a.m. now.
Morning in your place, right?
What?
It's morning in your side.
Yeah, 5 a.m. 5 a.m. here. Right.
Might be able to catch the sunrise.
Yeah, maybe. But thank you for having me. It was very fun. Yeah.
It was fun. Thank you. Maybe we can have some more like that. Okay. We'll be in touch like always.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
And send me the video of this once it's on YouTube. I would like to promote
we'll organize it. It's going to be on YouTube, and it's also recorded from the Zoom meeting. So we'll have something that we can edit and make it more nicer. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. See you. Whoever is still on, we're going to have a 3rd meeting in a month, and hopefully we can do it outside in a bar or something.
Yes, please.
In a Zoom meeting.
Yes, sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
And Armin, hope to see you here.
Yes, please.
There is reason to bring you over and we'll do something.
Sounds fantastic.
We'll do an event or something like that.
I look forward to it. All right.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Good morning, Armin.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Blue, stay there for a second with me.
Sure.
אני רק רוצה לדעת שאנחנו סוגרים נכון את הוידאו.
אתה חוזר לחזרה לבקרת שליטה ביוטיוב, ויש שם כפתור, end stream, או end בלי stream.
אני רוצה עריכת הסרטון, אנליטיקס.
למעלה, באותו מקום של ה-Go Live, צריך להיות כפתור end stream. אתה רואה, אתה מגיע לדף בסטודיו שמראה שאתה משדר?